Chapter 1384. Everyone present was smart, and they understood Duan Suqing's intention after thinking for a while. With Gong Xiaoxi, the person with real power in the Burning Sky sect, taking the lead in calling Xiao Chen exalted immortal master, in addition to the long-standing grievances between the two sects, Ing Taichi naturally pushed this case onto the Burning Sky sect. Looking back, wasn't the Gold Core expert that the Zhao clan sent to deal with the Qin clan also from the secluded forest sect? Now, it had also become the evidence of the Burning Sky sect's vendetta. After Qin Shengling understood the reason, his face turned pale. Wasn't this just finding trouble for the Burning Sky sect? The Qin clan was just a small clan in a small town. The previous incidents were all coincidental. If such a big basin of dirty water was poured onto the Burning Sky sect, wouldn't the Burning Sky sect tear him apart? Don't worry, Patriarch Qin. We, the Burning Sky faction, originally had a grudge with the secluded forest sect. Even if you put this matter on our heads, we won't care about anything. Duan Suqing turned his head and saw Qin Shengling's pale face. He shook his head, smiled, and comforted him. Duan Suqing shook his head and comforted Qin Shengling with a smile. Don't worry, Qin clan leader. Our Burning Sky sect and the secluded forest sect have always been at odds. Even if you push this matter onto us, we won't care about it. Now that a treasure like exalted immortal Xiao had fallen in front of him, who would care whether the Qin clan or the Burning Sky sect was the scapegoat? If he could bring Xiao Chang back to the sect, Duan Suqing could not wait to thank Qin Shengling a few more times. Then I will thank sect leader Duan for his understanding. Qin Shengling heaved a sigh of relief, and his expression eased up a lot. He turned his head and said to Xiao Chen, since the Qin clan has nothing to worry about, then exalted immortal Xiao can rest assured and go to the Burning Sky sect to play for a few days. I have Elder Gong here, so there will definitely be no problem. In that case, I can't reject sect leader Duan's good intentions anymore. I will go to your sect for a visit. Without any worries in his heart, Xiao Chen readily agreed. Although Xiao Chen couldn't leave previously because he was worried about the Qin clan, in his heart, he was still quite willing to go to the Burning Sky sect as a guest. It wasn't because of the sect master's invitation, but because Xiao Chen had his own plans. According to Xiao Chen's conjecture, the Burning Sky faction's influence in the Luxian prefecture was not small. Currently, the Qin clan's search was fruitless. If he went to the Burning Sky faction and asked them to send people to search around, the search area would be larger and the search power would be stronger. Perhaps, they would be able to find the whereabouts of Cheng Menjing and the others. As for treating Gong Xiaoxi's father, although Xiao Chen wasn't very confident, he wasn't worried. If he couldn't do it himself, he could ask the Elder Heaven Ancestor. He would definitely know how to solve it. Great! Burning Sky sect sincerely welcomes Upper Immortal Zhao's presence. Duan Suqing said repeatedly. He and Xian Zhaoshan looked at each other, their eyes filled with unconcealable joy. Xiao Chen stretched, turned to Gong Xiaoxi, and said, Disciple, I'll leave the Qin clan to you. If you encounter any experts that you can't defeat, don't force yourself. Send a message to Sect Master Duan, and I'll come back in a minute to kill them. No problem. Upper Immortal Master, don't worry and go have fun. Leave this place to me. Gong Xiaoxi promised, patting his chest. He naturally hoped that Xiao Chen could go to the Burning Sky faction. In this way, not only would there be hope for his father's injury to recover, but it would also improve the faction's prestige. It was simply killing two birds with one stone. Because it was late that day, Xiao Chen didn't want to travel at night with Hongzhu, so he arranged for everyone to stay in the Qin clan for the night. It was rare for the Qin clan to welcome so many upper immortals, so Qin Shengling naturally did his best to arrange the banquet and the accommodation. The guests and the host were all happy, and the atmosphere was very warm. The next morning, Sect Master Duan and Deputy Sect Master Xian took Xiao Chen and Hongzhu with them and set off for Luxian Prefecture. Because Hongzhu's strength wasn't enough to run at high speed for a long time, the speed at which they returned was much slower than when Duan Suqing and the others came. After a long journey of several hours, Xiao Chen and the others finally arrived at the Burning Sky faction in the eastern suburbs of Luxian Prefecture. Duan Suqing had already made the arrangements through a sound-transmitting talisman the night before. Therefore, when Xiao Chen and the others arrived in front of the faction, all the disciples and upper echelons of the Burning Sky faction were already gathered outside the main entrance in an orderly manner, solemnly welcoming the arrival of Xiao Chen. It was evident that they attached great importance to this upper immortal. Although Xiao Chen hadn't experienced such a spectacle, he wasn't afraid. He simply said a few words at the main entrance of the faction, which attracted bursts of laughter. There were also many young female disciples, who directly ignored Hongzhu's existence, and brazenly threw flirtatious glances at Xiao Chen. After Xiao Chen's speech came to an end, Duan Suqing led Xiao Chen and Hongzhu into the Burning Sky faction, chatting cheerfully and wittily. After settling down their accommodations, Duan Suqing specially booked the most high-class restaurant in Luxian Prefecture and held an extremely grand banquet to welcome the arrival of Xiao Chen and Hongzhu. This time, Duan Suqing spent a great deal of capital. He specially sent out invitations to many reputable clans and merchants in Luxian Prefecture, and arranged for them to eat banquets for 3 consecutive days, just to announce the arrival of the upper immortal. He also faintly ridiculed the silent Tranquil Forest sect. As the crowd ate and drank to their heart's content, they naturally conversed with each other and expressed their own opinions. The opinion that the Tranquil Forest sect was on the verge of collapse quickly spread. Everyone unanimously agreed that from now on, Luxian Prefecture would belong to the Burning Sky faction. There were people who were proud, and naturally, there were people who were disappointed. At this moment, the Burning Sky faction's morale was soaring, and its reputation was illustrious. At the same time, the spies that the Tranquil Forest sect had planted in the Burning Sky faction had naturally sent the news of the upper immortal Zhao's arrival back to the Tranquil Forest sect, who had been keeping a low profile. After receiving the news, sect leader Guan could not help but be furious. He smashed the teacup in his hand fiercely. This piece of news made him even more certain that this matter was caused by the Burning Sky faction from the very beginning. Motherf ********. That surname Duan is simply too arrogant. Isn't he openly making things difficult for the Tranquil Forest sect? Who gave him such great courage? In the conference hall of the Tranquil Forest sect, sect leader Guan was slamming the table with an ashen face and cursing loudly. Sitting on the seat above sect leader Guan was a dispirited Ingtaichi. At this moment, he also sighed helplessly and did not speak. The few chairs behind him were a group of elders from the Tranquil Forest sect. Hearing the roar of sect leader Guan, their expressions were solemn. They looked at each other and did not dare to express any opinions. Similarly, they chose to remain silent. If Ingtaichi was still at his peak, and his cultivation had not been destroyed, then the Tranquil Forest sect could immediately retaliate. However, at present, the strongest person had already been defeated. Therefore, the Burning Sky faction was actually not wrong in saying that their strength had indeed far surpassed that of the Tranquil Forest sect. Chapter 1385. In such a situation, the elders of the secluded forest sect could only lower their heads, lest they say something they shouldn't and get themselves into trouble. Sect leader Guan looked at the group of elders who were originally in high spirits but now hung their heads like frosted eggplants, and he couldn't help but feel angry. Just as he was about to open his mouth to scold them again, Ingtaichi waved his hand and said, "Forget it, no matter how hard you scold them, it won't help anything. If word of it gets out, the Burning Sky faction will only laugh at you. Save your energy. Martial uncle, I know you're right, I just feel uncomfortable holding my breath." Sect leader Guan sat down dispiritedly, and his face turned gloomy. "Cough cough, there's nothing I can do." Ingtaichi coughed a few times, and asked with difficulty while breathing heavily, "I'm afraid I can't hold on for much longer. Don't worry about the Burning Sky sect for now. I asked you to contact Director Liu of the Dada Immortal Cultivators Chamber of Commerce, did he reply? Ever since Taichi's dantian had been destroyed by Xiao Chen, he felt that his body was deteriorating day by day. Although it was said that immortal cultivators had a very long lifespan, and it was not easy for them to get sick, and their internal organs aged very slowly, that was all due to the effect of essence. Once the dantian was destroyed, the cultivation of the cultivator would be completely abolished, and they would not be able to gather vitality in their body again. Therefore, there was not much difference between them and ordinary people, and they would age and get sick. Marshal Uncle Ing, I wanted to ask you before, why are you looking for Director Liu? Sect leader Guan frowned and couldn't help but ask. Xiao Guan, do you still remember my master? Taichi lowered his head and thought for a while, then said calmly, many years ago, he left the secluded forest sect and traveled the world to train. He only contacted our sect through letters in the first few years, and then there was no news from him. I thought that since the Dada Immortal Cultivators Chamber of Commerce is so powerful, we might as well ask them to help us find my master. There were actually two reasons why Taichi wanted to find his master. Firstly, if he could appear, he would definitely be able to beat the crap out of Xiao Chang, who had appeared out of nowhere. Secondly, it was related to himself. If he could find his master, maybe his damaged dantian could be healed. But the immortal cultivation world is so big. He has been gone for so many years and there is no news at all. No matter how powerful the Dada Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce is, they may not be able to find him, right? Sect leader Guan shook his head in disagreement. In fact, sect leader Guan had something else to say. Perhaps that old man had already died in some corner of the world of cultivators. If that was the case, even the gods of the highest firmament would not be able to find him. Little Guan, what happened to you? Taichi's face darkened and he said seriously, how can we know if we don't try? Now that our tranquil forest sect has fallen to such a state, if we don't think of a way to save ourselves, we'll soon become an unknown small sect. Why are you still making excuses? What are you thinking? It's not that I don't want to find him. It's just that the Dada Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce has gone too far. Sect leader Guan's anger flared up again when he mentioned this matter. He slammed the table and roared. Seeing that the few elders and Marshal Uncle Ing were looking at him in surprise, sect leader Guan said angrily, that kid was also invited to the banquet by the Burning Sky faction. The point is that not only did he go to eat their meal, he even criticized me after eating. Criticized you? Taichi frowned slightly. He could not be bothered to mention his own purpose. He changed the topic and asked, he went to eat his meal. We didn't stop him. Why would he criticize you? It's because of the previous matter. Sect leader Guan complained bitterly. He said that it was because of our fight with the Burning Sky faction that indirectly caused Guan Weicai's death, causing the success rate of cooperation with the Dada Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce to be lowered. Our reputation was also damaged because of this. He even said that he wanted to blacklist us in the industry. As it turned out, after Lu Huaishui finished attending the Burning Sky faction's banquet, he thought that he finally understood the truth of the entire matter. After returning, he first wrote a report to his superiors, explaining the ins and outs of the matter. In the report, Lu Huaishui determined that Guan Weicai was actually a victim of the personal grudge between the Burning Sky faction and the Tranquil Forest sect, and that Xiao Chen was also the force behind the Burning Sky faction's invitation. The Zhao family just happened to have an agreement with the Dada Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce and invited Guan Weicai to be their worshipper. After the report was submitted, it didn't take long for the instructions from the higher-ups to come down. Lu Huaishui immediately contacted sect leader Guan and conveyed the instructions to the secluded forest sect, telling them that Guan Weicai's death was due to a private fight between the two sects, and that the Burning Sky sect had secretly invited an expert to kill him. The Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce would not be responsible for any breach of contract. At the same time, Lu Huaishui also pointed out that the Tranquil Forest sect might have violated one of the terms in the contract between the two parties, and was suspected of swindling spirit crystals. After that, the Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce would conduct a further investigation. If the Tranquil Forest sect was indeed suspected of violating the rules and actively swindling spirit crystals, then the Chamber of Commerce would recover the 10,000 spirit crystals previously given, and reserve the right to pursue legal responsibility. I didn't expect it to be like this. A haze flashed across Ing Taichi's eyes. Recently, there had been too much bad news, and he felt a little mentally and physically exhausted. Sect leader Guan nodded helplessly and explained, now that Director Lu blamed the grudge between us and the Tranquil Forest sect for Guan Weicai's death. Not only did he speak harshly to our sect, he might even want to take back the 10,000 spirit crystals. That's why I feel that. I'm afraid it's not suitable for the Chamber of Commerce to help us find people anymore. It doesn't matter. If he wants those spirit crystals back, then we'll just give them to him. Ing Taichi thought for a while and made a decision. He said resolutely, as long as the Chamber of Commerce can find my master, everything will be easy to solve, and we can even give him another 10,000 spirit crystals. At worst, I'll let my master kill that Xiao Chang, and then let the Burning Sky faction compensate us for all our losses. Ing Taichi didn't care about the spirit crystals at all. From his point of view, the most important thing now was to find his master, and then let him find a way to repair his Dantian, so that he could become an immortal cultivator again. Sect leader Guan frowned deeply, and after a moment of silence, he finally agreed, looks like we can only do this now. Then I'll go and contact Director Lu again. Although that fellow isn't very honest, he's still trustworthy when doing business, and the key thing is that he's a guy who only cares about profits. As long as we're willing to spend more spirit crystals, he'll definitely be willing to let the Chamber of Commerce help us find your master. Chapter 1386. Let's do that. Ing Taichi nodded his head and cautiously reminded, no matter what condition he proposes, you must agree to it immediately and unconditionally. As long as he can find my master, he will agree to any condition. Now, the secluded forest sect can only rely on finding my master to regain their position as the top sect in Luxian Prefecture. After sect leader Guan nodded in agreement, Ing Taichi gave a few instructions to the other elders, telling them to appease the disciples and wait for the news from the Chamber of Commerce of Immortal Cultivators. After everything was arranged, he stood up and returned to his room to rest. The 3-day banquet finally ended in a lively atmosphere. Xiao Chen had a rough understanding of the Burning Sky faction situation. The Burning Sky faction and the Secluded Forest sect had existed in the Luxian Prefecture for many years, and their feud had been going on for a long time. When the Secluded Forest sect's Ing Taichi's teacher was still around, the Burning Sky faction did not have any particularly powerful talents. Hence, they had been suppressed by the Secluded Forest sect. After that, Ing Taichi's master left the faction to wander. The Secluded Forest sect's strength immediately declined. In addition, a cultivation expert appeared in the Burning Sky faction. It was Gong Xiaoxi's father, Gong Ruidong. Hence, the Burning Sky faction became the top sect in Luxian Prefecture. However, good times did not last long. Gong Ruidong accidentally went berserk during his cultivation and was seriously injured. He had no choice but to retreat to recuperate. The Secluded Forest sect immediately overtook its strength. Ing Taichi, who was initially suppressed, suddenly appeared and became the top expert of the Secluded Forest sect. The strength of the two factions fluctuated and neither was convinced of the other. Usually, there would be conflicts. However, ever since Gong Ruidong from the Burning Sky faction was injured and went into seclusion, the Secluded Forest sect had the upper hand in most of the battles. Hence, the people of Luxian Prefecture were more inclined to believe that the Secluded Forest sect was the top sect in the prefecture. However, after a few days of banquets, everyone knew that Fan Forest sect had sent Immortal Xiao, who easily defeated Ing Taichi. Hence, the Burning Sky faction quietly returned to its original position as the top sect. After the 3 days of banquets, the various clans and merchants in the Wuxia prefecture realized that the secluded forest sect had not made any moves. Instantly, they had their own ideas and started to re-evaluate the situation. Many of them who were quick to act had even approached the Burning Sky faction to express their goodwill, preparing to join the Burning Sky faction. After all, everyone hoped that they could have a powerful backer. Even though the Burning Sky faction had been so arrogant these few days, the secluded forest sect was still able to keep their composure. According to past experience, it was not that they disdained to make a move, but that their strength had indeed been greatly damaged, and they were no longer able to suppress the Burning Sky faction. One day after the banquet, Xiaofan had nothing to do, so he asked someone to find Duan Suqing, intending to have him take him to see Gong Ruidong's injury. Sect leader Duan, I heard that Gong Xiaoxi's father suffered from qi deviation and was injured. He has been recuperating in seclusion and hasn't recovered for a long time, right? Xiaofan asked when he saw Duan Suqing enter the room. Yes, because at that time, his qi deviation was more serious, and it wasn't easy to save his life. Therefore, he has been recuperating step by step, and hasn't fully recovered yet. Duan Suqing nodded and answered honestly. Oh. Since Gong Xiaoxi is willing to give me face and serve as a high priest in the Qin clan without any fees, then I can't be too at ease. Xiaofan smiled slightly and said, I'll do a little repayment on behalf of the Qin clan, and go treat his father's injury. I wonder if it's convenient for you to bring me over and introduce me to him? Of course. I can't ask for more. Duan Suqing's eyes brightened. How was this a little repayment? It was simply a great thing. Then you lead the way. We'll go and take a look now. Xiaofan didn't delay and directly walked out of the room. Duan Suqing hurriedly ran in front of him to lead the way. I heard from Xiaoxi that Exalted Immortal Zhao's objective in going to Swallow Forest Town seems to be to look for his missing companions. On the way to Gong Ruidong's place of seclusion, Duan Suqing, who was thinking of finding an opportunity to get close to Immortal Zhao, asked with a smile. Yes. Unfortunately, the Qin clan has been searching for a long time, but there's still no news, Xiaofan replied. He thought to himself, this is great. I don't need to say anything, and you've taken the initiative to mention it. Duan Suqing couldn't wait to do Xiaofan a favor, so he immediately followed up, if you don't mind, I can also ask my subordinates from the Burning Sky faction to help you inquire around. It can also be considered as a little bit of help. Xiaofan nodded calmly and said casually, oh, that's fine too. After I cure Gong Ruidong's illness, I'll tell you the relevant information about my companions. Duan Suqing nodded repeatedly and was about to say a few words of flattery when Xiaofan added, but according to my guess, it's very likely that they are not in Wuxia prefecture. Otherwise, with the liveliness of the banquet these days, they would definitely come after hearing the noise. So I guess they may have wandered to a small town nearby. I hope sect leader Duan can increase the search efforts and expand the scope of the search. Exalted Immortal Zhao's matter is our Burning Sky faction's matter. Even if you don't say it, I will definitely do so. Duan Suqing immediately patted his chest and guaranteed Xiaofan. Then I'll thank sect leader Duan first. There's strength in numbers. I hope your search will be fruitful. Xiaofan smiled and thanked him, finally feeling a little relieved. Exalted Immortal Zhao is too polite. Duan Suqing thought for a moment and asked tentatively, but Exalted Immortal Zhao, there's actually a problem that I haven't figured out. Since your companions were inadvertently separated from you, why didn't they use the message-transmitting talisman to contact you? They should be able to contact you faster this way. It's like this. Previously, when we came out to train, we accidentally encountered a few powerful cultivators from an enemy sect, and then we started fighting. Xiao Chen's expression did not change as he explained, although I killed all of them in the chaotic battle, I accidentally got separated from my companions. Their luggage and voice transmission talismans are with me, which is why I couldn't contact them. In order not to expose his origin, Xiao Qin could only casually bluff. He was afraid that Duan Suqing would not believe him, so he added, in order to train ourselves, we didn't bring any spirit crystals with us. I don't think there's anywhere to buy message-transmitting talismans, so, actually, Xiao Qin was thinking too much. After Duan Suqing heard the first part of his words, the corner of his mouth was already twitching. He was so shocked that he didn't care to listen to the second part of the explanation. In Duan Suqing's eyes, exalted immortal Zhao's cultivation was already incomparably heaven-defying. Even if he turned the entire Luxian county upside down, he probably wouldn't be able to find one. Chapter 1387. Most importantly, exalted immortal Xiao was actually able to kill all of them. Just how strong was the sect behind him? Exalted immortal Xiao, which sect did you and your companion come from? Duan Suqing took a deep breath and asked carefully. As for which sect I am from, it's not convenient for me to tell you. Seeing that Duan Suqing had been successfully intimidated by him and was trembling with fear, Xiao Qin found it a little funny. However, his expression did not change. He said indifferently, I believe that since you have been the sect leader for so long, you should know the rules better than me. There are some things that are not good for you to know too much. Yes. It's all my fault for talking too much. Please don't take offense, exalted deity Xiao. Duan Suqing shuddered and quickly squeezed out a smile, afraid that exalted immortal Xiao would be dissatisfied with him. Xiao Qin waved his hand and did not speak again. Fortunately, they had arrived at the place. Duan Suqing quickly stepped forward and gently knocked on the door. Who is it? A low and slightly hoarse male voice came from behind the door. Reporting to Grand Supreme Elder, I'm Duan Suqing. I've brought a guest to see you. Duan Suqing reported respectfully. Come in. After a while, a tired voice sounded from behind the door. After getting a response, Duan Suqing turned to Xiao Qin and said, Immortal Xiao, the highest elder is doing closed-door training inside. Please come with me. Pushing open the door and following Duan Suqing into the room, Xiao Qin saw a haggard old man at first glance. At this time, the old man was sitting on the bed with his eyes closed and seemed to be quietly adjusting his breathing. This person should be Gong Xiaoxi's father, Gong Ruidong. His facial features were somewhat similar to Gong Xiaoxi's, but there was a kind of dispirited and sickly expression between his brows. His complexion was also somewhat pale, without any color of blood. After both of them entered the room, Gong Ruidong slowly exhaled and opened her eyes. She looked at Xiao Qin and then turned to look at Duan Suqing. She asked seriously, what's going on? Reporting to Grand Elder, this is Xiaoxi's newly acknowledged master, Xiao Chang. This time, he was specially invited to the Burning Sky faction as a guest. Duan Suqing bowed, and very respectfully introduced Xiao Qin. Gong Ruidong sized up Xiao Qin again. His expression was even more gloomy, and his tone was somewhat unfriendly. And then? It's like this. This time, we invited exalted immortal Xiao to come. On one hand, we hope that he can give some pointers to the disciples in the sect. On the other hand, we want to treat your injuries and let you recover as soon as possible. Only then did Duan Suqing explain the purpose of his visit. No need. Just as Duan Suqing's voice fell, Gong Ruidong's thick eyebrows furrowed into a ball, and she immediately refused. How could I not know what's going on with my own injuries? But... Duan Suqing was stunned. He still wanted to say a few words. Gong Ruidong waved his hand, pointed at Xiao Qin, looked at Duan Suqing, and said in a deep voice, besides, you're already an expert of the nascent soul stage, right? Even you can't heal my injuries, so where did this little brat come from? You're really something. You were actually deceived by a little brat. Could it be that he drugged you? Gong Ruidong didn't believe that Xiao Chen could cure him. The Burning Sky faction had already invited countless famous doctors in the Luxian prefecture to diagnose his injuries. He didn't know how many treasures and spirit crystals he had spent, but what was the result? They were all helpless. This brat looked so young. What could he do? He must be a swindler. But he didn't expect Duan Suqing to be deceived at such an old age. Looking at Gong Ruidong's righteous expression, Xiao Chen didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He shook his head, squinted at him, and teased, "So you know so much. Then why don't you go to heaven?" Originally, he wanted to treat his father's injuries for Gong Xiaoxi's sake. After all, it was just a small effort. He didn't expect that this person not only didn't care about it, but also questioned him. Hearing Xiao Chen's angry and teasing words, Duan Suqing's face stiffened. He couldn't afford to offend these two people. Helplessly, he could only say to Gong Ruidong with a bitter face, "This Grand Supreme Elder, please listen to my explanation. Although this exalted immortal Xiao looks very young, his medical skills are quite exquisite. Moreover, he also helped Elder Xiaoxi. Unfortunately, before Duan Suqing could explain what Xiao Chen had done, he was ruthlessly interrupted by Gong Ruidong again. Say no more. In short, I will never let him treat my injuries. You can leave. I'm going to continue my closed-door training." Gong Ruidong waved his hand decisively. He didn't want to say anything more. He closed his eyes and adjusted his qi circulation again. In fact, Gong Ruidong couldn't be blamed for being too arbitrary. Since he was injured, he had been in closed-door training all year round. He didn't know anything about what had happened in the outside world. As the pillar of the sect, he was usually arrogant. Therefore, at first glance, he concluded that a young boy like Xiao Chen didn't have any ability. Tut, it seems that this person has been in closed-door training for too long. His mind is a little muddled. Xiao Chen stretched and moved his muscles and bones. Then he said lightly, "Since he doesn't want me to treat him, there's no need for me to stay any longer. I'll leave first. When he wakes up, I'll come back." After he finished speaking, Xiao Chen lifted his feet and left the room. He didn't want to argue with such an old man. Moreover, this guy's thinking was too stubborn. It was useless to continue talking. Look, I was right. He ran away with a guilty conscience. Looking at the back of Xiao Chen who turned and left, Gong Ruidong deliberately raised his voice and said loudly, "In the future, don't let this kind of swindler in again. Otherwise, people will think that our Burning Sky faction is easy to cheat. If it weren't for the fact that I'm paralyzed and can't move, would have slapped him away." At this time, Xiao Chen hadn't gone far. Moreover, Gong Ruidong's voice was very loud. Naturally, he heard his sarcastic and abusive remarks. However, Xiao Chen didn't intend to lower himself to his level. Anyway, he was the one who proposed to help treat the illness. Since the other party refused to accept it, there was no need to say more. Grand Elder, you can't say that." Duan Suqing didn't have time to stop Immortal Xiao. As soon as he turned around, he heard Gong Ruidong say such humiliating words. Cold sweat suddenly flowed down his back. Duan Suqing couldn't help but look back at Xiao Chen, who was gradually getting further and further away. He found that he wasn't angry because of this and was still walking leisurely with his hands behind his back. Only then did he quietly let out a sigh of relief. Chapter 1388. Why can't I say that? Gong Ruidong glared at him and cursed angrily, "This is the Burning Sky faction. It's not a gathering place for swindlers. You're really blinded by lard, and you still want to speak up for that immature brat." Duan Suqing tried his best to explain, "Grand Elder, you don't know the situation, but Immortal Xiao helped Elder Xiaoxi to break through to the nascent soul stage not long ago, and he can be considered as a great benefactor of our Burning Sky faction. Xiaoxi has been in the Gold Core Peak stage for so long, and he's already about to break through to the nascent soul stage. He doesn't need that brat's help at all. Gong Ruidong snorted coldly from his nostrils, frowned, and curled his lips. I think he's purely here to deceive people. But that immortal Xiao crippled old Ing of the Tranquil Forest sect. That Ing Taichi has already reached the nascent soul stage level 3, Duan Suqing became more and more powerless as he tried to defend himself. Did you see him cripple old Ing with your own eyes? Gong Ruidong didn't wait for Duan Suqing to finish his words, and asked with a sneer. This. I didn't see it. Duan Suqing choked, and could only shake his head honestly, thinking, although I didn't see it with my own eyes, Gong Xiaoxi wouldn't lie, right? How could the Grand Elder not even believe his own son's words? Isn't that it? Do you believe in hearsay? Sure enough, Gong Ruidong still wasn't convinced, and with an expression of knowing that he was a liar, he loudly rebuked, maybe the Tranquil Forest sect deliberately made a show to deceive you, so that they could send that brat to the Burning Sky faction, and use the opportunity of treating my illness to harm me. You're really getting more and more muddle-headed. Staring at Duan Suqing, whose face was alternating between red and white, Gong Ruidong's heart was very dissatisfied, and he secretly wondered if it was time for someone else to be the sect leader. This guy was too unreliable, and he fell for such a clumsy trick. No, I heard it from Xiaoxi. He also said. Duan Suqing wanted to explain in detail, but before he finished, Gong Ruidong said impatiently, don't talk about it anymore. Don't mention it again. Hurry up and go do your own things. As for that Xiao guy, find a way to get him out as soon as possible. I don't want to see him again. This. All right. The corner of Duan Suqing's mouth twitched. Duan Suqing helplessly, and looked at Gong. Gong Ruidong didn't want to talk anymore. After leaving Gong Ruidong's room, Duan Suqing immediately contacted Gong Xiaoxi with a voice-transmitting talisman and told him the whole thing. Gongt Gong Xiaoxi's ruo. Ti Gong Teet Gong's rut, heat ti. Ti Gong Gongt Gong ti. Ti Gong Xiaoxi couldn't help but jump in fright when he found out that his father was very disrespectful to exalted immortal Xiao, determined that he was a swindler, and even wanted to chase him away. He thought to himself, my dear father, you're going to write off all of your son's contributions. Gong Xiaoxi, who was burning with anxiety, didn't even bother to pack his luggage. He immediately ran to the study room and gave a few simple instructions to Qin Xingling. Then, he left the Qin clan and rushed towards the Burning Sky faction without stopping. Fortunately, Gong Xiaoxi had just broken through to the nascent soul stage, and his body was full of vitality. Running at full speed, he had already arrived at the Burning Sky sect when the sky turned dark. After entering the sect, Gong Xiaoxi asked about Xiao Chen's residence. He first ran to apologize to Xiao Chen, and then hurried to the place where Gong Ruidong was in seclusion. At this time, Gong Ruidong had just finished his dinner, and several disciples were helping him clean up the dishes. Seeing Gong Xiaoxi directly push the door open with a face full of anger, the disciples did not dare to say anything and hurriedly cleaned up the things and left. Why are you here? Gong Ruidong was about to adjust his breathing when he saw Gong Xiaoxi suddenly appear. He couldn't help but ask in surprise. Gong Xiaoxi strode to Gong Ruidong's bed and looked down at his father, who was half paralyzed. He said angrily, Father, how can you be so rude to Xiao Chen? I finally met such an awesome person and racked my brains to invite him to our sect as a guest. You actually want to chase him away and call him a liar? Brat, how can you talk to your father like that? Gong Ruidong didn't expect Gong Xiaoxi to get angry at him the moment he came in. He was a little angry and scolded, that brat is a liar. I've never seen such a young expert. He said he could help me heal my injuries. I don't believe it. Father, are you stupid? Gong Xiaoxi couldn't help but roll his eyes. With a pained expression, he said, Exalted Immortal Xiao is a genuine cultivator expert. His strength is unfathomable. He can destroy the Burning Sky faction with a flick of his finger. What nonsense are you talking about? That yellow-haired brat is an expert. I think you've been fooled. Gong Ruidong saw that his son was still talking nonsense. He angrily slammed the table and scolded. How can Xiaochen be a liar? I saw him cripple Olding with my own eyes. Gong Xiaoxi was anxious and argued with his father. You're so stupid. How do you know he's not putting on a show for you? Gong Ruidong still didn't believe it. He glanced at Gong Xiaoxi and said. Of course he's not putting on a show. He killed Guan Weikai from the Tranquil Forest sect before Olding went to him. If he was putting on a show, he didn't have to kill his own people, right? Gong Xiaoxi shouted angrily. Guan Weikai? You mean the relative of the sect leader of the Tranquil Forest sect? Is it a distant cousin or someone else? Gong Ruidong frowned and tried to recall. He seemed to have heard of this name. That's him. Gong Xiaoxi hurriedly nodded and explained, Guan Weicai's strength is about level 6 or 7 of the Golden Core stage. As he was hired by a merchant group to work in Yanlin town, he offended the Qin family for some reason and was killed by exalted deity Xiao. That's why Old Manning came out to seek an explanation. Gong Ruidong pondered for a while. If Guan Weikai was really killed, the possibility of it being a disguise was relatively small. After all, he was the relative of the sect leader. To put on such a big show in order to infiltrate the Burning Sky sect, the price seemed a little high. Then, when Guan Weikai was killed, were you there? Did you see it with your own eyes? After thinking for a long time, Gong Ruidong still had some doubts about the young man. I wasn't there when he died. But when Olding went to ask for an explanation, I was there. Gong Xiaoxi stomped his feet. He shouted angrily. Chapter 1389. Gong Xiaoxi was already helpless against this father of his, so he simply confessed everything. My scarlet flame pearl was destroyed by that old Ying's ice crystal. If it wasn't for exalted immortal Xiao blocking the fatal blow for me, I wouldn't be able to stand here and talk to you today. As Gong Xiaoxi spoke, he paced around the room like an impatient lion. He wanted to crack open his father's head to see what it was made of. Are you serious? That guy is that powerful? Gong Ruidong was still skeptical. That Xiao Chang looked like he was only in his teens or 20s. How could he crippling Taichi who was in the original infant stage? It's true, it's true. Everything I said is true. Gong Xiaoxi was completely anxious. He directly revealed his original infant stage level 1 cultivation and said loudly, Father, look carefully. I have been in the Golden Core stage for so many years. If not for exalted deity Zhao's help, I definitely wouldn't have been able to break through to the original infant stage so easily. Weren't you already about to break through? Maybe a certain acupoint in your body suddenly opened up, and you naturally broke through? It might not have been because of that guy's help that you succeeded. Gong Ruidong pouted and retorted with some dissatisfaction. His son was good at everything else, but he was too unconfident. Father, I really have to give it to you. Gong Xiaoxi almost blurted out a vulgar word. He held it in with great difficulty and explained weakly, you don't know the situation outside. Right now, the entire Lucian prefecture knows that the secluded forest sect has been defeated by us. The Burning Sky faction has become the #1 faction not only in name but also in reality. Many merchants and families have come to us to discuss cooperation, but the other party can only hide like turtles. Do you think they are acting? Exalted deity Xiao is the benefactor of our Burning Sky faction. Gong Xiaoxi was already completely speechless at his stubborn father. Although Gong Ruidong had not been in contact with the outside world for a long time after he went into seclusion to recuperate, it shouldn't be to the extent that his brain was fried, right? How could he so casually come to a conclusion? Seeing that Gong Xiaoxi was about to go crazy, Gong Ruidong finally didn't say anything. Others could lie to her, but her son wouldn't casually lie, right? If the Burning Sky faction really became the #1 faction in the Luxian prefecture, it would mean that a lot of resources would be tilted towards them. The entire faction would no longer be suppressed, and their abilities would become more and more prosperous with each passing day. If they were to put on an act, the losses would be too great, and there was no need for it. Gong Ruidong was not stupid to begin with. It was just that when she saw Xiao Chen's young appearance, her first impression was that he was lying, so she did not think too much about it. Now that she understood the details of the whole process, she realized that he really did have this ability. It seemed like he had really offended an exalted immortal. However, Gong Ruidong used to be an expert at the 5th level of the nascent soul stage, so it was inevitable for her to have some arrogance in her heart. Although she knew that she had done something wrong, she didn't want to lower her head and admit defeat. She still stubbornly said, "Since I've already offended him, let's just forget about it. No matter what, I was also an expert in the past, and I could be on equal footing with that guy with the surname Xiao. Once I recover my cultivation, I will also have the ability to fight against him. He definitely wouldn't dare to take revenge on the Burning Sky faction. Io, my dear father, do you think we can wait for you to recover your cultivation? Exalted Immortal Xiao can destroy the entire Burning Sky faction right now, and he won't even need to breathe." Gong Xiaoxi immediately shattered his father's imagination without mercy. "Impossible. Isn't he afraid that I will take revenge after I recover?" Gong Ruidong's face was a little embarrassed, and she still tried to be brave and shouted. "You also need to have the ability to do so." Gong Xiaoxi couldn't help but feel angry and funny at the same time. He said, "You should know that Exalted Immortal Zhao's ability is far beyond the 5th level of the nascent soul stage. I saw with my own eyes that he destroyed old Fart Ying's Dantian with one move. Think about it yourself. Even if you were at your peak, you wouldn't be able to destroy old Fart Ying with one move, right? Then what should I do?" Gong Ruidong finally realized that he had caused a huge disaster this time. His face was a little pale, and he said with a troubled expression, "When he came over this morning, I had already said everything. His ability is so high, he shouldn't forgive me so easily, right?" When he thought of the foundation that the Burning Sky faction had built over so many years, it was very likely that it would be ruined because he had lost his mind for a moment and said a few careless words. Gong Ruidong was already full of regret. "It's good that you know your mistake." Gong Xiaoxi saw that his father had finally realized his mistake, and his tone also softened. He comforted him softly, "You don't need to worry too much. As long as you don't do anything too excessive, Exalted Immortal Zhao's temper is still relatively good. Before I came to find you, I had already apologized to him. He shouldn't be too angry." "No. If you want to apologize, that's your problem. This disaster was caused by me, so I should personally apologize to him." Gong Ruidong shook his head with a solemn expression, and said in a deep voice, "I just don't know if he will accept my disrespect to him in the morning, and if I rashly go over to apologize now." Gong Xiaoxi felt that what his father said was a little reasonable. After thinking for a while, a light suddenly flashed in his mind, and he slapped his thigh and said, "I have an idea. How about this? I will carry you over, and you can personally apologize to him sincerely, and then beg him to recognize you as his disciple." "You mean apprenticeship?" Gong Ruidong was taken aback. He looked at Gong Xiaoxi with a strange expression and asked, "But I remember that you are also Exalted Immortal Zhao's disciple, right? If I also become his disciple, how should we talk about it? Isn't that simple?" Gong Xiaoxi carelessly patted his own chest, "When the time comes, we will talk about it separately. You can call me senior brother, and I will continue to call you father. Then. Alright, it seems like we can only do this now." Although Gong Ruidong still felt that it was a little strange, there was no other way at the moment. Besides, if Exalted Immortal Xiao was really as he said, and was able to cure his injuries, then he might very well be at the level of the legendary nascent soul paragon. If he could become the disciple of a nascent soul paragon, then the matter of seniority wouldn't be a problem at all. With this thought, Gong Ruidong also agreed. The two of them discussed for a while, and felt that this matter should not be delayed. It would be better not to wait until tomorrow, and go over that night to finalize this matter. Gong Ruidong simply packed up, and then leaned on Gong Xiaoshi's back, and quickly rushed towards Xiao Chen's residence. At the same time, on the other side of the Burning Heavens faction, in a beautifully decorated guest room, Hongzhu was pouting and complaining to Xiao Chen in a low voice. Chapter 1390. In the morning, Xiao Chen came back rather early. Hongzhu was a little surprised and asked curiously. Xiao Chen had nothing to do, so he simply explained the situation. After hearing it, Hongzhu couldn't help but stomp her feet in anger. Although she saw that Xiao Chen didn't seem to care, she was extremely dissatisfied with Gong Ruidong, whose eyes grew on his forehead. Unable to find an opportunity in the afternoon, after finishing dinner, Hongzhu complained to Xiao Chen, wanting to leave the Burning Sky faction as soon as possible. Hongzhu felt that since the other party didn't want to see her, there was no point in continuing to stay. It would be better to just leave. Little Hongzhu, don't make trouble. We've just arrived in the cultivation world and are unfamiliar with the people and the place. It wasn't easy for us to find a sect that we can rely on for a while. No matter what, we should first ask them to help us inquire about the whereabouts of Cheng Menjing and the others, right? Xiao Chen helplessly comforted him. Besides, didn't Gong Xiaoxi already come over to apologize? Calm down, it's easy to get wrinkles when you're angry. Xiao Chen chose to stay in the Burning Sky faction because he was somewhat helpless. Even if his strength was outstanding, he was only one person. Including Hongzhu, there were only two people. In such a vast and boundless cultivation world, with just the strength of two people, where could they go to find others? If there was any other way, Xiao Chen couldn't be bothered to stay in the Burning Sky faction and wait for news from others all day long. Humph. That stinky old man Gong Ruidong, it's fine if he looks down on me, but he even dares to scold this big sister's husband. Although Hongzhu could understand Xiao Chen, she still felt indignant and resentfully muttered, "You went to treat his injuries with good intentions, but in the end, not only did you not get any benefits, you even ended up being called a swindler. I'm so angry." The more she spoke, the angrier she became. Hongzhu simply reached out and grabbed the pillow placed on the bed. Her small fists continuously pounded on it while she muttered something, as if she was casting a spell on Gong Ruidong. Forget it, forget it. That old man has been staying at home for too long in order to recuperate. He probably hasn't seen much of the world. There's no need to stoop to his level. Seeing Hongzhu angrily pounding the pillow, Xiao Chen could not help but laugh. He had never imagined that this girl, who was usually so flirtatious, would occasionally reveal such a cute side. Hongzhu pouted and was about to say something when he suddenly heard a knock on the door, followed by Gong Xiaoxi's cautious voice, "Hi Immortal Master, Master Hong, have you rested? I have something to discuss with you. Is that convenient?" "It's not convenient." It was already the middle of the night, what was there to discuss? "Can't you wait until tomorrow to come back?" Hongzhu had originally been filled with a belly full of anger and had been worried about not having a place to vent it, so he decided to vent it all on Gong Xiaoxi. Hongzhu had originally felt that the atmosphere tonight was pretty good and had wanted to take the opportunity to throw a little tantrum and have Xiao Chen coax her. Who would have thought that Gong Xiaoxi would be so thick-skinned as to disturb them? She had nearly exploded with rage. This. Gong Xiaoxi was instantly dumbfounded. He stood rooted to the spot for a long time but was unable to say anything. His mind was completely blank and he did not know what to do. Leaning against Gong Xiaoxi's back, Gong Ruidong also had a bitter expression on his face. He subconsciously thought that Hongzhu's words were High Immortal Zhao's. Now that the other party was not even willing to see him, it seemed that he was really angry. This time, he was really in trouble. "Alright, little Hongzhu, don't make a fuss." Xiaochen smiled bitterly and shook his head. He lightly pinched Hongzhu's cheek, using his eyes to signal her not to cause trouble. Only then did he raise his voice and say, "We haven't slept yet, come in." After saying that, Xiaochen thought for a moment, then stood up and walked over to open the door that he had originally closed. Hongzhu could not help but be stunned by Xiaochen's sudden attack. She unconsciously touched her cheek and her pretty face blushed slightly. Her mind also began to run wild. What does Xiaochen mean by this action? Could it be that he has suddenly become enlightened? I've never seen him act so intimately in the past. Also, what does that look in his eyes mean? Could it be that he wants to do something intimate with me tonight? So embarrassing, should I agree or not? Seeing that Xiaochen had opened the door for him, Gong Xiaoxi hurriedly walked into the room with a smile on his face. He kept saying, "Hi immortal master, I'm really sorry. Why did you disturb me so late at night?" Mistress Hong, your face is so red, could it be that you're sick? Do you want me to help you find a doctor? Father, why did you hit me? Just now, as Gong Xiaoxi was speaking, he raised his head and saw Hongzhu's blushing face. Feeling somewhat puzzled, he casually asked, but before he could finish his words, he felt Gong Ruidong suddenly hit his back. "Go to hell, what are you saying? You're the one who's sick in the head." Hongzhu came to her senses and glared fiercely at Gong Xiaoxi before turning her head away in annoyance. "Hi immortal Xiao, Miss Hong, my son doesn't have the slightest bit of eyesight and he doesn't really know how to speak. Please don't take it to heart, he. Gong Ruidong hurriedly tried to smooth things over. Gong Ruidong was an experienced person. With just a glance, she could guess that Xiaochen and Hongzhu were about to do something that adults like to do. She just had to interrupt them before they could even begin, so they would definitely be angry. "Your son is indeed a bit of a fool, but I think you're also quite simple-minded." Glancing at Gong Ruidong who was lying on Gong Xiaoxi's back, Xiaochen frowned and asked, "Alright, hurry up and tell me. Is there something urgent for you to rush over to find me in the middle of the night? If there's nothing else, we're going to sleep." There's something. Gong Xiaoxi nodded repeatedly. He first placed his father on a chair at the side, then ordered a servant to bring over a cup of hot tea. After the hot tea was served, Gong Xiaoxi took the teacup and respectfully handed it to Xiaochen. Then, he bowed slightly and said with a shy smile, "Hi immortal master, although we're already master and disciple, I have yet to formally acknowledge you as my disciple. As the saying goes, etiquette cannot be discarded, so I've specially come over this time to make up for it. Is it really worth it for you to disturb me in the middle of the night for such a trivial matter? Can't you come back tomorrow?" Xiaochen could not help but roll his eyes. However, he still reached out and took the teacup. Just as he was about to raise his head and drink the tea, Xiaochen saw Gong Xiaoxi suddenly kneel down in front of him with a thud. He jumped in fright and immediately dodged to the side. Not knowing whether to laugh or cry, he scolded, "Are you crazy? Isn't it just acknowledging me as your master? Can't you do it properly? Why do you have to kneel and kowtow? Are you trying to shorten my lifespan or what?" Chapter 1391. Master is wise. In fact, I came to find you tonight not only to perform a formal apprenticeship ceremony, but also to ask for your help. Gong Xiaoxi was not offended by Xiaochen's rebuke at all. He grinned and insisted on kneeling on the ground, looking at Xiaochen with a face full of longing. "Stand up first. How will it look if others see this? Don't you want me to treat your father's illness? I promise you, there's no need to kneel." Xiaochen waved his hand and motioned for Gong Xiaoxi to stand up. Xiaochen felt that Gong Xiaoxi was making a mountain out of a molehill. The apprenticeship ceremony was just a formality. Why did it have to be so grand? But no matter what he said, Gong Xiaoxi kept kneeling and refused to get up. Xiaochen had no choice but to pick up the cup in his hand and drink a few mouthfuls of tea, taking it as accepting him as a disciple. "Thank you, exalted master, but I still can't get up, because I want to ask for your help with another matter. My father also wants to be apprenticed to you. If you agree, then I will be his senior brother from now on," Gong Xiaoxi said seriously as soon as Xiaochen finished his tea. Pfft, Xiaochen didn't even have time to swallow the tea in his mouth. When he heard this, he sprayed it all over Gong Xiaoxi's face. However, Xiaochen had forgotten to apologize. At this time, he was looking at this strange father and son pair in disbelief. He didn't know what to say at all. Weren't these two people's imaginations too king big? Father and son actually want to be senior brother and junior brother? Exalted master, don't worry. I won't deny him as my father. It's just that in front of you, we will be senior brother and junior brother. In front of outsiders, we will still be father and son. There is no difference. Gong Xiaoxi seemed to have guessed Xiaochen's doubts and immediately added. Xiaochen opened his mouth but still couldn't say anything. He just turned to look at Gong Ruidong, who was sitting on the side with a smile, and then looked down at Gong Xiaoxi, whose expression didn't change at all. He felt as if he had been struck by lightning from head to toe, no, hundreds of times. Gong Xiaoxi thought that Xiaochen was wondering why Gong Ruidong didn't kneel to him and quickly continued to explain. Exalted master, because my father is injured, it's not very convenient for him to walk. This time, I will kneel to you on his behalf. At this moment, the tea on Gong Xiaoxi's face was still dripping down, dripping onto the ground. There were still a few yellowish-brown tea leaves hanging near his nostrils, but he didn't seem to feel it at all. He continued to look at Xiaochen with reverence, his body not moving at all. It seemed that as long as Xiaochen didn't agree, he would kneel and not get up. Hongzhu, who was sitting on the side, also had a shocked expression. He thought to himself, do the sects in the cultivation world have any lower limits? One is a father, the other is a son. Now, not only are they going to enter the same sect, the father and son have to address each other as senior brother and junior brother. The strangest thing is that the two of them don't think there's a problem. Instead, they both look as if it's only natural. This is too strange. Ahem. After a long silence, Xiaochen finally came back to his senses. He cleared his throat uncomfortably and looked at Gong Xiaoxi with a strange expression. I say, the cultivation world is really messed up. Although I don't mind taking in another disciple, I think, the two of you, father and son, should reconsider it carefully. After all, the son is the senior brother and the father is the junior brother. This kind of thing is strange no matter how I hear it. If this gets out, you will definitely become a laughing stock. Don't worry, master. Gong Xiaoxi patted his chest loudly and said righteously, we will definitely know what we are doing. We won't say it casually and lose face for Master Immortal. Don't worry, exalted Immortal Xiao. My son and I are still quite tight-lipped. Tonight's matter is only known to the few of us here. It will definitely not spread. Gong Ruidong also chimed in. Then. All right. Xiaochen saw that this strange father and son pair would not give up until he agreed. He could only nod helplessly. In any case, to me, there's no difference between 1 and 2 disciples. If I'm free, I will naturally give you some pointers. However, if I go out to travel and gain experience, the two of you will cultivate and comprehend on your own. Of course, of course. Gong Xiaoxi immediately got up and calmly wiped away the water stains and tea leaves on his face. He smiled and echoed, Exalted Immortal Master has told me this before. On the way here just now, I specially told my father about it. He has already remembered it. Seeing that Xiao Chen had finally agreed, Gong Ruidong could not help but heave a sigh of relief. He said with some embarrassment, "Master, I'm really sorry about what happened this morning. I was blinded by greed and failed to recognize Mount Tai. I said such disrespectful words. Please forgive me, Master. Please don't stoop to my level." "That's right. Junior brother is young and ignorant." He spoke without thinking. "I hope Master won't blame him." Gong Xiaoxi quickly echoed. "It's okay. I'm used to it anyway." Xiao Chen waved his hand speechlessly. "I'm not such a narrow-minded person. You don't have to take it to heart. Thank you for your understanding, Master. Thank you for speaking up for father, senior brother." Gong Ruidong saw that Xiao Chen really did not mind. He was full of joy and thanked him. He then asked with a face full of anticipation, that disciple would like to be bold and ask Master, "What is your current strength? Could it be the legendary Original Soul Realm?" Original Soul Realm? What's so great about that? Legendary? You're too easily satisfied. Xiao Chen curled his lips in disdain and played with the cup of tea that had been emptied. Gong Ruidong and Gong Xiaoxi looked at each other. Did they hear wrongly? Exalted Immortal Xiao actually felt that Original Soul Realm was not powerful enough? Seeing that the two of them were in a daze, Xiao Chen put down the teacup in his hand. He pinched his chin and asked calmly, "Speaking of which, since your Burning Sky faction is so powerful in Luxian Prefecture, can you find our Original Soul Realm cultivator for me? It just so happens that I have nothing to do now. I can beat up this type of cultivator to try it out." Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Gong Ruidong's mouth opened wide. He was so shocked that he could not say anything. Master could even beat up a cultivator at the peak of the nascent soul stage? Could it be that he had already reached the level of the mysterious ascending stage that he had only seen in the ancient books? That must be it. Master could cripple Tai Chi with one move. Such a powerful strength could not be achieved by just our Original Soul Realm cultivator. He must have already reached the profound ascension stage. Chapter 1392. Thinking of this, Gong Ruidong felt even more respect for Xiao Chen. He had already forgotten to answer his Lord Master's question. He could not help but let his imagination run wild. If he could receive his guidance in the future, then maybe in his lifetime, he could also reach the unattainable peak of the nascent soul stage, right? Or even try to break through to the profound ascension stage. Heavens, just thinking about it makes me feel excited. Seeing that his father was sitting there in a daze without replying, Gong Xiaoxi did not dare to be slow and immediately said, "Exalted Master, as far as I know, the Tranquil Forest sect really has an original infant stage cultivator at the original infant stage." Although Gong Xiaoxi was shocked to hear Immortal Zhao's words, he had been with Immortal Xiao for quite some time now. He had personally witnessed his Immortal Master's various magical techniques. So, his mental fortitude had become much stronger. That was why he was able to react so quickly. Oh. Then why did sect leader Duan say that Tai Chi was the highest level immortal cultivator in the Tranquil Forest sect? I remember that fellow was only at original infant stage level 2 or 3. Xiao Chen frowned and asked in surprise. It's like this. That original infant stage cultivator is currently traveling around the immortal cultivation world and has not returned to the Tranquil Forest sect for a long time. Gong Xiaoxi quickly explained. If that's the case. Looks like when he was around, you guys suffered a lot from him. Xiao Chen looked at Gong Xiaoxi, who was able to answer fluently, and asked with a smile. If not for the fact that he knew this fellow very well, Gong Xiaoxi would not be able to say anything so casually. Yes. When that old thing was around, we were suppressed by the Tranquil Forest sect. Gong Xiaoxi nodded his head in agreement. Ever since he left, the Burning Sky faction became the #1 faction in Luxian Prefecture. It was really glorious then. But it's a pity that my junior accidentally went berserk and was replaced by the Tranquil Forest sect. Cough cough. Gong Ruidong's face turned red and he hurriedly pretended to clear his throat. He glared at Gong Xiaoxi and signaled him to stop talking nonsense. Oh, yes, thanks to you, master, we have returned to the throne of number 1. Gong Xiaoxi saw the opportunity and immediately changed the topic to flatter Xiao Chen. Then, he added, by the way, I forgot to tell you just now. That person at the peak of the original infant stage is the master of Old Man Ing whom you crippled last time. That's great. I'm guessing that old Deviling has suffered a setback in my hands, so he's planning to get his master back once he returns. Xiao Chen immediately showed an overjoyed look. He nodded with satisfaction and said, when the time comes, I will let him perform a trapeze or other tricks to open your eyes. Ever since he came to the world of cultivation, Xiao Chen had always wanted to find an expert of the same level to compete with. He wanted to feel the difference between his cultivation and that of ordinary cultivators. Since he couldn't find an expert of the profound ascension stage, then a peak of the nascent soul stage would barely suffice. I didn't expect Master to really be able to make people go to heaven. I will wait and see then. Gong Ruidong suddenly recalled what Xiao Chen said to him in the morning and could not help but exclaim. If it was in the past, Gong Ruidong would definitely think that Xiao Chen was taking advantage of the fact that there was no one at the peak of the original infant stage to fight with him. Hence, he was bragging. But now that he saw his master's eager look, Gong Ruidong had no doubt that he could suppress someone at the peak of the original infant stage. That exalted master, we still don't know when Old Man Ying's master will return. Why don't you check on my father's injuries first? Let's see how to treat him. Although Gong Xiaoxi wanted to see the Tranquil Forest sect lose face, his first concern was how to treat his father's injuries. Alright, let me check his pulse first. Xiao Chen nodded his head and walked to Gong Ruidong's side. He stretched out his finger to check his pulse. After feeling for a while, he found that there were indeed a few stagnant meridians in his body. The qi in his dantian was also rather chaotic. His pulse was a little depressed. It should be because he had been injured for too long that it had become a serious illness. Master, my injuries have been like this for many years. I've eaten many treasures in between, but there was no effect at all. Do you think there's any hope of curing it? Gong Ruidong asked anxiously as he looked at Xiao Chen's serious face and did not speak. Xiao Chen came back to his senses and nodded his head. It shouldn't be too much of a hindrance. Let me think about it for a night. Tomorrow, when I come up with a suitable plan, I will tell you the detailed steps. Really? Really? My injuries can be cured? Gong Ruidong was stunned on the spot. His eyes gradually turned red and his voice trembled as he asked. How many years had it been? He had eaten countless medicines and tried countless methods. Even Gong Ruidong himself was on the verge of despair. Who would have thought that a miracle would suddenly fall from the sky today? Someone said that his injuries could be cured. At this moment, Gong Ruidong felt as if he was in a dream. The feeling was too surreal. Why? You don't believe that I can cure you? Xiao Chen smiled faintly and asked in return. I believe, I absolutely believe. Gong Xiaoxi was afraid that Gong Ruidong would say something that he should not say. He quickly replied, then we will go back first and wait for the good news from Master. We won't disturb your rest and Master's wife. Yes, yes, yes. Let's go back first. Let's go back first. Gong Ruidong immediately woke up. He nodded his head and called for Gong Xiaoxi to carry him. Gong Xiaoxi ran over in 2 or 3 steps and held Gong Ruidong's hand. He said emotionally, Father, now that Master said that your illness can be cured, I will carry you back first and come to find Master tomorrow morning. Pfft! Xiao Chen choked again. This Gong Xiaoxi was really a clown. If this sentence was heard by people who did not know the inside story, they would definitely be stunned. However, it could be seen that although Gong Ruitong and Gong Xiaoxi were father and son, their personalities were very different. Gong Ruitong was upright and proud, but somewhat old-fashioned and stubborn. Gong Xiaoxi, on the other hand, was tactful and sophisticated. He was good at dealing with all kinds of situations and would think of ways to achieve things that were beneficial to him. He did not know whether the father and son, whose personalities were completely different, would quarrel with each other when they communicated. However, Xiaochen could also see that the two had a very good relationship. Gong Xiaoxi had thought of so many ways to cure his father's injuries. He had even made a scene to make Xiaochen recognize him as his master. "Don't come too early. We are going to sleep in." Hongzhu hurriedly shouted as he watched Gong Xiaoxi gradually leave with Gong Ruitong on his back. Chapter 1393. Tonight, I might even have to do some shameful things with Xiaochen. Hongzhu did not want to be disturbed by Gong Xiaoxi again. Although her imagination was very beautiful, unfortunately, Hongzhu still did not get what she wanted. That night, other than obediently dual cultivating with her, Xiaochen did not even speak more than a few words to her, let alone perform any passionate actions. This caused Hongzhu to feel extremely stifled, and she inwardly cursed the blockhead countless times. An uneventful night passed, and the sky outside the window had just begun to brighten when Xiaochen immediately stopped dual cultivating. After putting on his clothes, he walked to the washroom with a contemplative expression on his face to wash up, causing Hongzhu, who had just woken up, to be completely baffled, not knowing what was going on. In truth, Xiaochen did have his own doubts, because he had recently discovered that Hongzhu's strength had been increasing more and more slowly, and it had become extremely difficult for her to break through to the next realm. He could not help but be greatly puzzled by this situation. After repeatedly thinking about the process of him dual cultivating with the other women, Xiaochen did not discover anything different, so why was Hongzhu's progress so slow? What exactly was the problem? Elder Heaven Ancestor, why is Hongzhu's progress so slow? Did you notice anything amiss? Unable to figure out the reason no matter how he thought about it, Xiaochen asked Elder Heaven Ancestor in his mind while washing his face. After a moment of silence, Elder Heaven Ancestor slowly opened his mouth and said, "I've also thought about this problem. Do you remember when you were cultivating, you once refined medicinal herbs to temper your body?" "I remember. It also cost me a lot of money, causing me to look for ways to earn money everywhere, and I even went to help people look for dogs." Xiaochen nodded. This past event had left a very deep impression on him. Hongzhu is also cultivating now, but she has not taken medicinal herbs like you. I suspect that this is the reason why her cultivation progress is so slow. The Elder Heaven Ancestor said calmly, "Go back and make her a dose of the medicine according to the original prescription. She should be able to level up quickly." So that's how it is. I thought that the spiritual qi of heaven and earth in the immortal cultivation world was so abundant that there was no need to drink medicine. Xiaochen suddenly realized and sighed with emotion. No matter how good the spiritual energy is, it's useless if I can't absorb it into my body. Elder Heaven Ancestor scoffed at Xiaochen's idea. Otherwise, why are there so many unarmed ordinary people in the cultivation world? Everyone here should be an expert cultivator. Alright, I was wrong. Xiaochen touched his nose awkwardly and changed the topic. Then how do we treat Gong Ruidong's injury? Can I use my Yuan Qi to help him break through the blockages in his meridians? No. The Elder Heaven Ancestor flatly rejected Xiaochen's idea and said in a deep voice, "He has been paralyzed for too long. If you rashly pour pure Yuan Qi into his body, it is very likely that the blockages in his meridians will be damaged, and he will suffer from Qigong deviation again, which will lead to his death. Then can we give him some natural treasures first, with the help of the medicinal efficacy to open up his meridians, and then give him the right medicine?" Xiaofan suddenly thought of the natural treasures he had collected in the inner martial world. He had kept the package with him and had not touched it until now. Maybe it could be used this time, and Gong Ruitong and the others would not have to spend spiritual crystals to buy it. No, we can't directly give him a strong medicine in his body. The elder heaven ancestor rejected Xiaofan's suggestion again and explained simply, the natural treasures you brought are too strong and not suitable for him. If we force him to use them, it will cause the same result as when you pour primordial qi into him. This won't work, and that won't work. Will his wounds be incurable? Xiaofan was dazed. Last night, he had patted his chest and promised that he would ask the elder heaven ancestor to come and pick up the plan today, but now he realized that none of the approaches worked. That won't happen. The elder heaven ancestor's words immediately reassured Xiaofan. How about this? I'll write another prescription for you. You ask them to bring the herbs here. Then, you will brew the medicine the way you did before. When it is done, give the soup to Hongzhu and leave the dregs to Gong Ruitong. Huh. Well. He has spent a lot of spiritual crystals, only to get some dregs in the end. Isn't that a bit inappropriate? Xiaofan was a bit hesitant about the elder heaven ancestor's suggestion. Wasn't giving the dregs to Jin Beibei's grandfather what he had done in the past? But at that time, he had bought the medicine. Golden Fur Lion King had only spent money to buy the dregs. Now that he had asked Gong Xiaoxi to spend spiritual crystals to buy medicine, he had ended up giving him a pile of dregs. Xiaofan felt that he had wronged Gong Xiaoxi and his son. Although the Burning Sky faction was the #1 faction in the Wuxia prefecture, they had only recently eased up a little. In the past, they had been suppressed by the secluded forest sect too much. Xiaofan could not bear to let them spend this money for nothing. That's fine too. If you have a better treatment method, you can go ahead and give it a try. Anyway, I have already told you the method. As for whether you want to do it or not, that's your decision, the elder heaven ancestor said calmly. All right then. Anyway, it's not my first time doing this. Give me the prescription, I will ask Gong Xiaoxi to buy the medicine. Xiaofan shook his head helplessly and replied with a bitter smile. The elder heaven ancestor did not speak again. After a while, a list of medicinal ingredients appeared in Xiaofan's mind. He quickly put down the towel in his hand and quickly returned to his room. He picked up a pen and paper and wrote down all the medicinal ingredients he needed. After he finished writing, Xiaofan ordered his servants to find Gong Xiaoxi. When Gong Xiaoxi came over, his face was full of excitement. When he thought that his father's injury could be cured, his footsteps became much lighter. Xiaofan did not waste any more words with him. He immediately passed the prescription to him and instructed him to buy all the ingredients on the list according to the prescription and then send them to him. Gong Xiaoxi respectfully received the prescription. Then, he lowered his head and glanced at the medicinal ingredients on the list. His expression changed slightly. He saw that all of the ingredients written on the list were priceless treasures and elixirs of the highest grade. Fortunately, there were not any that were particularly rare. As long as one had spiritual crystals, they could basically be bought. Gong Xiaoxi only felt a slight pain in his heart. Then, he immediately made a decision. In order to cure his father's illness, he had to buy the most expensive medicinal ingredients. After bidding farewell to Xiaofan, Gong Xiaoxi immediately went to the Burning Sky faction's warehouse to transfer a large amount of spiritual crystals. Then, he left the faction and went straight to the various big medicine shops in the Wuxia prefecture. In his eagerness to save his father, Gong Xiaoxi used the fastest speed he had ever used in his life. After about an hour, Gong Xiaoxi returned to the Burning Sky faction with bags of medicinal ingredients. He solemnly handed the items over to Xiaofan. Chapter 1394. Gong Xiaoxi had originally wanted to stay and watch how Xiaofan refined the medicine, but before even a quarter of an hour had passed, he was directly thrown out by Xiaochen. After all, when Xiaochen finished brewing the medicine, the authentic medicinal soup would be given to Hongzhu, while Gong Ruidong would only be drinking the dregs of the medicine. Therefore, he naturally could not let Gong Xiaoxi know the truth. After patiently simmering for several hours, Xiaochen finally finished brewing all the medicinal ingredients. Xiaochen fiddled around in the secret chamber for a long time, before he took out a bowl of medicinal soup with a lighter color and ordered the servant standing outside to bring it to Gong Xiaoxi as soon as possible. He told the servant to bring it to Gong Ruidong immediately, and then circulate his mental cultivation method to spread the medicinal efficacy. After the servant left, Xiaochen returned to the secret room, took out another bowl of dark-colored medicinal soup, and stealthily slipped into Hongzhu's room. "Xiaochang, husband, why do you smell like medicinal herbs?" Seeing Xiaochen enter the room with a bowl of jet-black medicinal soup, Hongzhu, who was looking at himself in the mirror, wrinkled his nose and asked in surprise, "What are you holding in your hand? You're not planning to drug this big sister, and then take the opportunity to do that to me, are you?" "Ahem, I just realized that you always like to think of good things." Xiaochen teased with a smile, then carefully placed the steaming bowl on the table, and urged Hongzhu, "I just brewed this medicinal soup, it can help you with your daily cultivation. Drink it while it's still hot." As this was the first time he had brewed the medicinal ingredients, it had been brewed relatively early, and he still had to help Gong Ruidong boil the dregs of the medicine after it was done. Xiaochen had deliberately injected a trace of yuan qi into the medicinal soup when it came out of the furnace, thus preserving the temperature of the medicinal soup. Even now, it was still steaming hot. "What kind of medicine is this?" Hongzhu curiously stood up and walked over. He approached the medicinal soup and lightly sniffed it, then muttered in a strange tone, "What ingredients did you put in this soup? Why can't I smell it?" Since the Hong family's medicinal herb business was very large, Hongzhu had grown up surrounded by piles of medicinal herbs. However, even after sniffing and sniffing at the bowl, she still found it difficult to distinguish which medicinal herbs and natural treasures were in the bowl. "These are all medicinal herbs of the immortal cultivation world, how could you possibly smell them?" Xiaochen looked at Hongzhu's slightly knitted eyebrows and said with a smile. "Really?" Hongzhu cast a suspicious glance at Xiaochen, then asked with a grin, "Why do you want me to drink medicine all of a sudden? Are you trying to do something to me? Don't always think about these useless things. This is to help you cultivate. Didn't I drink medicine often when I was cultivating? Don't you remember that you always go to Little Hong's pharmacy to buy medicinal herbs?" Xiaochen shrugged his shoulders and urged, "All right, stop wasting time. Drink the medicine quickly and circulate your mental cultivation method to absorb the medicine. Exercise for another 2 to 4 hours and you'll see the effect." "All right, I'll believe you this time." Seeing that Xiaochen would not take the bait no matter what, Hongzhu could only secretly purse her lips and quietly pick up the bowl on the table. Just as she brought the medicinal soup to her mouth, Hongzhu felt a scorching heat on her delicate upper lip. She could not help but pout and complain, "Hiss, it's so hot. Husband Xiaochen, come and help me blow it." "Blow it, cough cough, you're already a grown man, yet you're still afraid of heat? You're a cultivator." Hearing Hongzhu's slightly ambiguous words, Xiaochen helplessly shook his head. "Can't cultivators be afraid of heat? I want you to help me blow it." Hongzhu pouted and straightforwardly handed the bowl of medicine to Xiaochen. "You win." Xiaochen felt a headache coming on as he looked at the spoiled Hongzhu. He had no choice but to gently blow a few breaths at the medicinal soup in the bowl. Hee, this is how big sister's obedient little brother should be. Hongzhu smiled coquettishly in satisfaction and put away the bowl of medicine. She tested the temperature of the medicinal soup again and felt that it was about right before slowly drinking it. After patiently waiting for Hongzhu to finish drinking the medicine, Xiaochen took the bowl and stood up, saying, "It's done. If there's nothing else, go and cultivate. This bowl of medicinal soup cost me a lot of spirit crystals, so don't waste these precious herbs." Ugh, it's so bitter. Husband Xiao Chen, big sister wants to eat candy. Or maybe something sweet is fine too. Hongzhu frowned and stuck out his tongue while fanning his mouth with his palm, trying to get rid of the bitter taste in his mouth. Xiao Chen poked Hongzhu's forehead and snappily said, "Candy my ass. Where am I supposed to find something sweet in such a short time, ugh." Before he could finish his sentence, Xiao Chen saw Hongzhu pouncing towards him and giving him a French kiss. Her playful little tongue was still stirring in Xiao Chen's mouth. The two kissed passionately for a while before Hongzhu happily left Xiao Chen's lips and happily said, "Ha ha ha, my mouth is finally not bitter anymore. Thank you, husband Xiao Chen. Big sister is going to cultivate now." Xiao Chen was stunned for a long time before he finally realized that he had been taken advantage of. Looking at Hongzhu, who was wholeheartedly cultivating, Xiao Chen sighed. He was truly at his wits' end. He knew that this little she-devil had always wanted to have an intimate relationship with him that was beyond friendship. However, he was afraid of being teased, so he had directly rejected her. He did not expect that she would actually come up with such a despicable trick this time. He was completely caught off guard and fell for it. Xiao Chen touched his fragrant lips and shook his head with a smile. It must be said, the taste of this hot kiss was really not bad. After tidying up the medicinal bowl, Xiao Chen originally planned to go over to Gong Ruidong's side to take a look. However, after thinking about it, he decided to stay behind and stand guard for Hongzhu. No matter what, Gong Ruidong was someone who had experience in cultivation, so she naturally knew what to do after drinking the medicinal soup. However, Hongzhu had just started cultivating, and drinking a medicinal soup to aid in his cultivation was the first time he had done so. Thus, Xiao Chen felt that it would be better for him to take care of Hongzhu. Exalted Immortal Xiao. My father's lower body is starting to move. Your prescription is really effective. What should I do next? Seeing that Hongzhu had gradually entered a state of cultivation, Xiao Chen felt a little relieved. However, he suddenly heard Gong Xiaoxi's loud shout coming from outside the door. Startled, Xiao Chen first turned to look at Hongzhu. After discovering that she was not affected at all and was still immersed in her cultivation, he finally relaxed. He opened the door with a gloomy expression and walked out, making a shushing gesture to the beaming Gong Xiaoxi. What are you yelling about? Do you even know how to speak properly? Xiao Chen glared at Gong Xiaoxi and said in a low voice with a sullen expression, Your father's lower body is starting to move, what does that have to do with me? Running over here and yelling like a ghost for no reason, aren't you afraid of disturbing others? Do you believe that I won't cut off your tongue and feed it to the dogs right now? Chapter 1395. Xiao Chen was speechless at Gong Xiaoxi. This guy was really too careless with his words. What did he mean by moving his lower body? How could he say such ambiguous words in broad daylight? What an idiot. I'm sorry, Immortal Xiao. My father is my junior brother, your disciple. Just now, when he drank the medicine you prescribed, he felt a tingling pain in his lower body and the soles of his feet were a little itchy. You should know that his legs and feet have not felt for many years. At this moment, he is very happy, so he specially asked me to come over to tell you. Gong Xiaoxi touched his nose embarrassedly and smiled. He thought that Xiao Chen had forgotten that his father was his junior brother. At this time, Gong Xiaoxi was in a very good mood. Even if Xiao Chen scolded him harshly, he would not mind. Oh, that means the medicine is effective. Xiao Chen nodded patiently and asked, Is he cultivating now? Could it be that he was too excited after feeling it that he even forgot about cultivating? No. Gong Xiaoxi quickly shook his head and explained, he is now in the stage of adjusting his breath. Before cultivating, he asked me to report to you first and share this joy. Gong Xiaoxi was so excited that his voice became louder and louder. Before Xiao Chen could stop him, he asked loudly, By the way, Immortal Master, when will my junior brother drink the medicine for the second time? You're so noisy, can't you speak softly? Xiaochen kicked Gong Xiaoxi angrily and kicked him away from the room. Then, he walked over and said slightly impatiently, let him continue drinking it tomorrow. I think it won't be long before he completely recovers. In the future, don't bother me with this kind of small matter. Look at you, you're so surprised and inexperienced. Looking at the ecstatic Gong Xiaoxi, Xiaochen said, what's there to be proud of? If it weren't for the fact that your father's meridians are too weak, I would be able to cure him in a few breaths of time. Why would I need to drag it out for so long? Yes, yes, yes. Although those medicinal ingredients are a little expensive, as long as they can cure my father's injuries, no matter how many spirit crystals we spend, the Burning Sky sect will not hesitate. Gong Xiaoxi crawled up and said confidently. Then, he rubbed the footprint on his, but that was kicked by Xiaochen. Only now did Gong Xiaoxi realize that he had been a little too rash. His exalted immortal master might be resting, but he had barged in and disturbed him. His exalted immortal master would definitely be angry. After going back last night, Gong Ruidong had already reminded him about this matter, but he was too excited just now, so Gong Xiaoxi forgot about it. Alright, alright. Do you have anything else? If there's nothing else, hurry back and protect your father and junior brother. Now your master's wife is cultivating in her room, and she's at the critical moment of a breakthrough, so I have to watch over her. I don't have time to talk nonsense with you. Xiaochen couldn't be bothered to talk with Gong Xiaoxi any longer, and directly asked him to leave. Then, he turned around and walked back to his room. So it's master's wife who's cultivating. Gong Xiaoxi was shocked. Only now did he understand why his exalted immortal master had such a bad attitude towards him. Realizing that he had spoken a little too loudly, Gong Xiaoxi immediately covered his mouth and didn't dare to say anything else. He tiptoed out of the courtyard where Xiaochen lived, and also shooed away the disciples and guards who were guarding outside, so that they wouldn't cause trouble for Xiaochen. In fact, Gong Xiaoxi was thinking too much. If those disciples didn't receive an order to summon them, they absolutely wouldn't dare to rashly enter. Only he, who held a high position in the Burning Sky sect, would dare to barge into someone else's inner courtyard. Xiaochen didn't pay attention to Gong Xiaoxi's little tricks, and directly walked into the room. He found that Hongzhu had already finished cultivating, and was in the process of adjusting his breathing. His body was emitting the fluctuations of a third-level foundation establishment stage cultivator. Strange, this breakthrough speed still seems a little slow. Xiaochen rubbed his chin, and asked the Elder Heaven Ancestor in his heart, Elder Heaven Ancestor, what's going on? Hongzhu's level still can't be raised. This is still called not being able to be raised. He only drank a bowl of medicinal soup, and he has already advanced from the first level of foundation establishment stage to the third level. That's 2 whole levels. Don't be too greedy. The Elder Heaven Ancestor replied in a bad mood. I just feel that his level is still very low. If there's a battle, he won't be able to help. Xiaochen awkwardly scratched his head. Think about it, when you first advanced, you drank 5 days of medicinal soup, and still couldn't break through 1 level. Her current situation is already considered not bad. The Elder Heaven Ancestor said indifferently, moreover, now that you are worshipped by the faction, and you don't have to spend your own money to buy medicinal herbs, you should be satisfied. Alright, although it's only 2 levels, it's still better than nothing. Xiaochen sighed, in any case, there will be medicinal herbs that can be used in the next few days. Let's just slowly advance like this. At least it's much better than before, when I couldn't even advance 1 level. The reason why Xiaochen wasn't so anxious was because Duan Suqing had already explained to him that the entire Luxian prefecture was relatively large. Moreover, most of the areas were forests and wastelands, and from time to time, ferocious beasts roamed about. Although there were many disciples in the Burning Sky faction, to spread the news to find the whereabouts of Cheng Menjing and the other women, it still needed to be done step by step, like a minesweeper. Not to mention that it was very difficult to find those forests and wastelands. Some of the remote towns that were scattered behind the dense forests needed to spend a few days, and only after a long and arduous journey could they reach the place safely. After those disciples arrived and set up camp, and then asked the local residents, or looked for clues, it would take a certain amount of time before they could send back the confirmed news. According to the instructions of Xiao Chen, the Burning Sky faction would send disciples out to search for people every day. At present, there were already some reports from the nearby investigations, but the situation was not very optimistic. Basically, there were no traces of any strangers entering the territory. Although Xiao Chen didn't say anything, Duan Suqing felt very embarrassed. He had made a guarantee, but in the end, it didn't have any effect, so he could only work hard to send the disciples to further places. Xiao Chen also knew that this was a hard work, and it would definitely take more time to search with his own divine sense. Therefore, he could only choose to stay in the faction, refining medicine for Hongzhu to drink every day, and using dual cultivation to help her gradually improve her strength. On the other hand, he continued to use medicinal dregs to treat Gong Ruetong, and patiently waited for the news of Cheng Menjing and the other women. At the same time, in the northwest of the cultivation world, in a desolate and boundless desert, there were two figures who were moving with difficulty against the scorching sun. Chapter 1396. Looking carefully, the person walking in front was an old man with an evil face, and the figure that fell not far behind him was a delicate and slender woman whose whole face was wrapped in a silk scarf, revealing only a pair of limpid eyes. "Hey! Are you going in the wrong direction? We've been walking for so long, why haven't we seen a single person? There's not even a town around here, let alone a living person. I'm dying of thirst." The woman wrapped in a silk scarf walked forward with heavy steps and shouted angrily at the old man in front of her. Obviously, she had a lot of resentment against him. "Miss Cheng, I don't know." The old man in front heard the scolding and responded helplessly, "I've never been to this place. You see, it's all desert as far as the eye can see. I can't tell whether we've gone the wrong way or not. Let's go on for a while. I guess there will be a town not far ahead." At this time, the old man also collapsed with a bitter face, thinking, "It's 2F** King deceitful. I don't know what's wrong with that shit portal. Not only did it send me to this inexplicable place, but it also sent a woman to torture me. If I had known this, I wouldn't have come in." Hearing that, the woman pulled off her veil, revealing an exquisite and beautiful face. Surprisingly, it was Miss Cheng Menjing, whom Xiao Chen had been searching for a long time. Her pretty face was slightly cold, and she said coldly, "Xishan Giant Bull, didn't you swear that you had been to the world of cultivation when we were at the open heaven gate? Why are you confused now? Is it because you're old and your memory is bad? Are you suffering from dementia?" "I'm wronged, Miss Cheng. I did come to the world of cultivation before, but at that time, I was directly transmitted to the edge of a small town. I've never been to the desert at all." Xishan Giant Bull wiped his sweat and couldn't help complaining. Xishan Giant Bull racked his brains these days, but he couldn't understand why he was transmitted to the desert, and why he came with Cheng Menjing. This was not scientific. Humph. Anyway, I've never been here before. You can say whatever you want. With a sullen face, Cheng Menjing shouted angrily, "Look, not only can we not find Xiao Chen, but we are also lost in the desert. Tell me the truth, did you deliberately take a detour to find a place to sell me? Miss Cheng, have you ever seen people selling people in the desert? Besides, I don't even know the way, so why would I take a detour to fool you?" Xishan Giant Ox was about to cry. It said from the bottom of its heart, "I really want to find a small town and rest as soon as possible." At this time, Xishan Giant Ox's heart was about to collapse. Originally, it had its own plan before entering the world of cultivation. After entering the world of cultivation, it would first lead the whole ghost cultivation sect to advance and retreat together with Xiao Chen, and then find a chance to quietly inquire about the location of the evil cultivation sect in the world of cultivation. After finding a suitable sect, it would secretly lead its disciples to seek refuge with Xiao Chen behind his back. It would also feel like returning to its ancestral home. It didn't expect that after entering the transmission gate, it would come to such a remote place. Except for Cheng Menjing, there was no one else around. In fact, Xishan Giant Ox really didn't want to take Cheng Menjing everywhere. After all, the world of cultivation was full of danger and there were too many terrible things. Cheng Menjing, who was only at the peak of the venerable realm, was simply a burden. Once they encountered any danger, this little girl would definitely not be able to help them, and it was very likely that she would drag them down. But after thinking about it carefully, Xishan Giant Bull didn't dare to not bring Cheng Menjing along with him. If he were to carelessly leave this young miss in this dangerous place, she might be killed or crippled by other people or wild beasts. If he were to meet Xiao Chen later, he would definitely vent his anger on him. Xishan Giant Ox struggled in its heart several times, and finally chose to accept the situation helplessly. First, he would take Cheng Menjing to find a place to stay, and then he could only take one step at a time. I don't care so much, anyway, it's your fault. Cheng Menjing waved her little fist and shouted fiercely, I don't want to live in the wilderness tonight. If you can't find a town to stay in before the sun goes down, I'll ask Xiao Chen to beat you up. After saying that, Cheng Menjing subconsciously raised her head, wanting to see where the sun was and whether it was about to go down. Inadvertently, she glimpsed something that was not the same as the desert from the corner of her eye. Ah, it's easy for you to say, where can I find? Xishan Giant Ox said with a sad face, but halfway through its words, it was suddenly interrupted by Cheng Menjing, look over there. Hearing Cheng Menjing's surprised and happy voice, Xishan Giant Ox looked back and found that she was pointing excitedly in a direction in front of the left, so it also looked over there. Huh? What's that? With this glance, Xishan Giant Ox also noticed something strange and blurted out in surprise. Xishan Giant Ox rubbed its eyes and looked in that direction again. It saw an oasis in front of the left of the two of them, and if it looked carefully, it could see many wooden houses scattered on the ground. It looked like a village. That seems to be a small town. Cheng Menjing looked for a long time and finally made a judgment. She shouted excitedly, let's go and see. Great, I finally don't have to sleep on the sand tonight. Cheng Menjing cheered and licked her dry lips. She couldn't wait to run in the direction of the small town, but just as she ran to the side of Xishan Giant Ox, she was stopped by him. Why are you blocking the way? Haven't you heard that a good dog doesn't block the way? Cheng Menjing suddenly became angry and glared at Xishan Giant Ox. Miss Cheng, don't act rashly. Xishan Giant Ox didn't seem to hear Cheng Menjing's scolding at all. Instead, it said cautiously, there are too many dangers in the world of cultivation. It's better for us not to go there before we know the situation inside. What situation? What danger? Cheng Menjing stamped her feet impatiently, pointed in that direction and said, the town is over there. Won't we know when we go there? Why are you being so timid here? Do you think we are playing online games? How can there be so many dangerous things? Don't. What if that small town is a mirage? We will become a dead horse. Xishan Giant Ox immediately shook its head, and its feet seemed to be rooted to the ground. Chapter 1397. You're crazy. Cheng Menjing rolled her eyes at the bull, pointed to the figure in the town, and said, if it's a mirage, how can there be people in it? Don't you even have this common sense? The bull frowned and thought for a while, but still shook its head and tried to persuade her, even if it's not a mirage, it may be an illusion created by other immortal cultivators, deliberately deceiving people so that they can kill people and rob their treasures. We'd better be careful. I find that your brain circuit is really funny. Cheng Menjing snorted at the bull's description. If immortal cultivators could create such a powerful illusion, would they still need to come to this broken place to rob people? They have no brains at all. Miss Cheng, I'm not trying to scare you, but the people in this immortal cultivator world are beyond our imagination. Even if you are at the venerable peak, you are still nothing here. The bull still tried to persuade Cheng Menjing, but unfortunately, she did not buy it at all. So what if it's beyond imagination? Cheng Menjing snorted and said proudly, I'm also very powerful, not worse than Xiao Chen at all. Even if there are masters coming, I can kill them. This. The bull scratched its head in distress, thought for a moment, and gritted its teeth. Okay then. If you insist on going to that town, then let's go. But you have to promise me that you must keep a low profile. Trust me, you can't go wrong. Okay then. Let's keep a low profile, then let's go directly. What's the next step after entering the town? Cheng Menjing curled her lips and pulled up the veil again, carefully covering her face, only revealing a pair of beautiful eyes, and then asked in a low voice. After entering the town, let's first find someone to inquire about the situation in the town, then eat something to fill our stomachs, and then think about the next plan. The bull had already thought about the next step just now, and immediately replied. Oh, okay. Cheng Menjing nodded. She thought of something else and quickly asked, by the way, do you have any money with you? If I go to eat, I don't have money to pay the bill. Otherwise, I'll become a freeloader. I can't afford to lose my face. Hearing Cheng Menjing's question, Xiaofan giant ox suddenly slapped its head and said, I forgot to tell you before. In the immortal cultivation world, the banknotes of the secular world are not used. They all use high-grade spiritual jades as the common currency. In other words, spiritual jades that have been polished and carved are called spiritual crystals. Don't let it slip later. If it's so troublesome, why didn't you tell us beforehand? Xiao Chen and the others definitely didn't bring enough spirit jades. Spirit crystals. Doesn't that mean they won't even be able to eat? Cheng Menjing frowned and said unhappily. I was in such a hurry that I forgot. And I thought everyone would be teleported to the same place. I didn't expect everyone to be separated. Now, even if I want to say it, I can't, Xiaofan giant bull said in a low voice, a little embarrassed. You're really going to piss me off. Cheng Menjing couldn't wait to beat up Xiaofan giant bull. She managed to resist this impulse with great difficulty and asked with a face full of displeasure, what about you? How many spiritual crystals did you bring? Xiaofan giant ox quickly took out a small bag from its arms and counted the spiritual jades in it. It sighed and replied helplessly, actually, I didn't bring much, just a dozen or so. High-grade spiritual jades are very difficult to obtain. At that time, I just took a bag with me and then forgot about it. Looking at the small bag in Xiaofan giant ox's hand, Cheng Menjing snorted and didn't bother to snatch the bag. Anyway, when there was a place to pay the bill, she would let this old man show up. Xiaofan giant ox carefully put the bag close to its body. Then, it suddenly thought of something. It looked at Cheng Menjing and said, also, if someone asks about our identity and origin, you must not tell the truth. The cultivators here look down on the people of the martial arts world. Don't make trouble for yourself. Okay, why do you look like you're going through menopause? You're so wishy-washy. You only know how to talk nonsense. Cheng Menjing squinted at Xiaofan giant ox and said angrily, let's go and ask about the situation. I'm starving. At this time, Cheng Menjing's stomach was already rumbling with hunger. Her throat was so thirsty that it was about to spit fire. However, she was also annoyed by Xiaofan giant ox. She couldn't be bothered to talk to him anymore. She covered her ears and walked quickly in the direction of the town. Xiaofan Junyunyu's mouth twitched, and his expression became slightly distorted. As the lofty sect leader of the ghost cultivation sect and the most outstanding talent in the martial arts world, no one had ever dared to mock him like this. Even Hong Dingrui and the others did not dare to do so. Unexpectedly, after entering the world of immortal cultivation, it was completely insulted by a little girl. Although there was a faint anger in its heart, Xiaofan Giant Ox did not dare to act rashly. After all, Cheng Menjing was Xiao Chen's wife. It could offend anyone but a big shot from the world of immortal cultivation. Xiaofan Giant Ox, who swallowed his anger, had to adjust his mood and obediently followed behind Cheng Menjing, silently acting as a small follower. Entering the town quickly, Xiaofan Giant Ox looked around cautiously. After looking for a long time, he did not find anything wrong. He thought to himself, is this really a small town? There are no robbers who kill people and rob their goods? Cheng Menjing was not as careful as Xiaofan Giant Ox. She went straight into a restaurant that looked more upscale. Xiaofan Giant Ox had no choice but to follow her in. As soon as they sat down, Cheng Menjing quickly ordered some food and a few pots of hot water, and then quietly looked around. She found that there were not many people in the restaurant, but the atmosphere was not bad. Everyone was talking to each other, and the waiter was also busy with a smile on his face. Xiaofan Giant Ox also observed for a while and found nothing unusual. Taking advantage of the fact that the food had not been served, he called a waiter to inquire about the news. After the waiter came over, Xiaofan Giant Ox first picked up the cup of water on the table and drank it. He felt that his dry throat had been relieved a little. Then he put on a smile that he thought was very kind and asked, "Little brother, we, father and daughter, are both new to your honorable land, so we don't know much about the situation here. We want to find someone to ask, where is this place? Where is this place in the world of immortal cultivation? Huh? The two of you do look unfamiliar. Are you bandits from the desert?" The waiter who walked over was a young boy. He first glanced strangely at the ferocious-looking West Mountain giant bull, then looked at Cheng Menjing, who was drinking water with a veil over her face. Then, he took a step back with a vigilant expression and asked, "What's wrong?" Chapter 1398. What horse? Ouch! When Xiaofan Giant Bull heard that he was regarded as a bad guy, he was about to slap the table angrily. But before he could finish, he was kicked hard by Cheng Menjing under the table. "Little brother, don't listen to his nonsense. He and I are just ordinary friends. We are not father and daughter at all." After Cheng Menjing kicked Xiaofan Giant Bull until he lost his voice, she slowly took off her veil and explained with a smile. "Oh. I see. The waiter stayed in this remote place on the edge of the desert all year round. When had he ever seen a beauty of Cheng Menjing's level?" He was immediately stunned, and his gaze at Cheng Menjing was a little dull. Cheng Menjing had long been used to this kind of gaze from others, so she didn't care. She stared at the waiter with a smile and continued, "We are really not from this town. We just came here with a few friends to play. Unexpectedly, there was a storm in the desert, so we got separated on the way. After we got lost, we came to this strange town, so I want to ask you about the situation here." "Hi. Miss, hello. This town is called Moyao Town. It is a town on the edge of Baxian County." After a while, the waiter came back to his senses. He touched his nose in embarrassment and hurriedly introduced the restaurant. "Moyao Town? Baxian County?" Xiaofan Giant Bull repeated it subconsciously, feeling a little dumbfounded. Why is the name of this place completely different from the town he came from before? I have never heard of it before. In the past, I could only enter the world of immortal cultivation through teleportation. Why was I teleported to a completely different place this time? What is going on? Yes. The waiter was still looking at Cheng Menjing in a daze. Hearing this, he nodded and added, because we're in the western part of the immortal cultivation world, there's only endless desert nearby. There's nothing to see at all, so very few people come here to sightsee. If there was any misunderstanding just now, please don't take it to heart. It's okay. It's mainly because my friend looks too much like a bad guy. It's not your fault. Cheng Menjing smiled and waved her hand. She rolled her eyes at Xiaofan Giant Bull and asked, by the way, have you noticed any strangers appearing in Moyao Town recently? Cheng Menjing deliberately ignores the lecherous expression of the waiter. Now she knows nothing about the environment in the world of cultivators. The most urgent thing for her is to meet with Xiao Chen and the others. She doesn't mind being stared at. In any case, he wouldn't lose a piece of flesh. As for the Xiaofan giant ox, it was drinking water gloomily at the side. Was it his fault that he looked like a bad guy? As the sect leader of the ghost cultivation sect, if he didn't look fierce, how could he hold the fort? No. The waiter frowned and recalled for a while. He shook his head and said, definitely no other strangers have been here. I see. Cheng Menjing lowered her eyes in disappointment. It seemed that Xiao Chen and the others hadn't been to this town. Otherwise, the waiter would definitely have an impression. However, she still didn't give up and asked again, is it possible that they went to another restaurant and didn't come here, so you don't know? It's unlikely. The waiter said honestly, because our restaurant is one of the better ones in Moyao Town. The location is also not bad. So, usually when strangers come here, they will choose to stay here. If we didn't find them, they probably won't be found in other places. Okay then. Cheng Menjing sighed and changed the topic. Then, I wonder who are the horse bandits that you mentioned just now? The waiter's body trembled slightly. He first looked around vigilantly, then he lowered his voice and said, the horse bandits are the bandit organization in the desert. They often burn, kill, and loot along the way in the surrounding towns. I heard that they even robbed a batch of goods from the Fan family a few days ago. The Fan family master was very angry. He said that he was gathering people to teach them a good lesson. What? I didn't expect this group of horse bandits to be so hateful. Cheng Menjing frowned and said with some dissatisfaction. She didn't expect that the immortal cultivation world was similar to the martial arts world. There were also people who relied on force to rob property and only wanted to reap without sowing. Shoo. The waiter was very nervous. He immediately put his finger in front of his lips and whispered, stop talking. Those horse bandits are very vengeful. They will take revenge for the smallest grievance. If they hear you, you will be in serious trouble. Xiaofan Giant Ox was relieved when he heard this. That's right. I said that the immortal cultivation world is full of danger. It's impossible for everything to be peaceful and beautiful. Look, I was right, wasn't I? Cheng Menjing didn't notice Xiaofan Giant Ox's expression at all. Instead, she wrinkled her nose disdainfully. However, she didn't ask any more questions. Instead, she asked, the Fan family that you just mentioned sounds quite powerful. What do they do? Oh, the Fan family is a big family in our Moyao town. They are rich in supplies and often do business with merchants in the surrounding towns. Seeing that Cheng Menjing changed the topic, the waiter finally breathed a sigh of relief and continued to introduce, I heard that they even have customers in Wuxia County. It seems that the goods that they were going to send out this time were robbed on the way to Wuxia County. Little Six, what are you doing? Come and help. Before the waiter finished speaking, the shopkeeper suddenly shouted. It turned out that he was asked to serve the dishes. I'm coming. The waiter responded, then hurriedly added to Cheng Menjing, if you want to find someone, you can go to the Dada Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce to try. Then I'll go and busy myself first. After that, the waiter left Cheng Menjing's table. He served the dishes they ordered attentively and then went to do other things. Dada Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce? What the hell is that? Xiaofan Giant Ox said to himself in surprise. When I came to the Immortal Cultivation world last time, I didn't hear anyone mention it. Could it be that it just became popular recently? Xiaofan Giant Ox pinched its chin and thought, but it felt that its brain was full of paste. It had no impression at all. AI, it seems that this Immortal Cultivation world is really not that simple. Xiaofan Giant Ox pinched its chin and thought, but it felt that its brain was full of paste. It had no impression at all. AI, it seems that this Immortal Cultivation world is really not that simple. Seeing that the waiter had served the dishes, Cheng Menjing smelled the fragrance, and her stomach immediately began to growl. She was not interested in continuing to ask. She quickly picked up the chopsticks and stuffed some vegetables into her mouth. She muttered vaguely, "Forget it, let's eat first. It's important to fill our stomachs. We'll go to the Chamber of Commerce later." Chapter 1399. Cheng Menjing had already given up hope on Xiaofan Giant Bull, who didn't know anything at all. She didn't know if it was true or not when it said that it had been to the cultivation world before. It seemed that it didn't know anything about what the waiter had said. Maybe it had made up the story about coming to the cultivation world. Alright then. Xiaofan Giant Ox thought for a long time but could not find a clue, so it could only agree. Looking at the table full of fragrant dishes, it temporarily threw the matter of finding Xiao Chen to the back of its mind. By the way, don't ever say that we are father and daughter. Cheng Menjing didn't forget to complain to the giant bull while eating. I don't want to be your daughter. Besides, we look completely different. Who would believe that? Besides, you are old enough to be my grandfather. The giant bull remembered the nonsense it had said in a moment of desperation. It couldn't help but smile awkwardly. It didn't dare to refute. It picked up the chopsticks and gobbled up the food. After eating and drinking to its heart's content, the giant bull burped with satisfaction. It took out the bag containing the spiritual crystals and waved at the waiter, asking him to pay the bill. Are you two done eating? Are you satisfied with the food? The waiter immediately walked over and put 2 cups of tea on the table. He asked with a smile. Well, it's okay. Here is the bill. How much is the total, spiritual crystals? The giant bull waved its hand lazily. It almost made a mistake. Okay, you have spent a total of 5 spiritual crystals. This is the bill. Please have a look. The waiter took out a receipt from his back, bowed and handed it to Xiaofan Giant Bull, and reported with a smile. What did you say? 5 spiritual crystals. The Xiaofan Giant Bull, who was originally reclining, immediately sat up straight and asked with a surprised expression, "It's just some ordinary food? Why does it cost 5 spirit crystals?" The giant bull didn't have time to listen to the waiter's explanation. It immediately snatched the bill and looked down. It pointed at the item on the bill and scolded, "What's wrong with you? We asked for 2 pots of hot water, and you charge 1 spiritual crystal for each pot? Is your restaurant a scam?" Hee, please calm down and listen to my explanation. The waiter wasn't angry. He still said with a smile, "Both of you are from another place, so you might not know much about the situation here. Our Moyao town is just at the edge of the desert, so water is the most scarce. But isn't this a little too expensive? 1 pot of water costs 1 spirit crystal. I don't even have to spend so much to buy a pot." West Mountain Giant Cow grabbed the bill with one hand and pointed at the teapot on the table with the other. It shouted angrily. "That can't be helped. You can go and ask around. In this town, no matter where you go, the price of water is the same. We definitely don't mean to cheat you." The waiter spread his hands helplessly. "After all, there isn't enough water in our town. Most of it is transported from other places. The cost is already very high, which is why we are selling it at such a high price. Please understand. Then can't you give us a discount, a little better? We just came from another place, so we don't know the situation here. 5 spirit crystals is indeed a little too much. Cheng Menjing was speechless after listening to the waiter. She begged pitifully. That being said, Cheng Menjing could still understand the difficulties of this restaurant. Water was originally more precious than gold in the desert. If the waiter really said that the water had to be transported from other places, then the transportation alone would cost a lot. After deducting the cost, there wouldn't be much profit. I can't make the decision for this. The waiter looked embarrassed. He couldn't bear to refuse Cheng Menjing's plea, but he couldn't help her to give a discount. After thinking for a long time, he gritted his teeth and said, "How about this? I will help you ask our shopkeeper first. If he agrees, then we can give you a discount." "That's great. Then I thank you in advance. You are so nice." Cheng Menjing immediately nodded with a smile. Her flower-like smile dazzled the waiter. He immediately patted his chest and guaranteed. Then, he quickly ran away with the bill. Xiaofan Giant Bull and Cheng Menjing looked at the back of the waiter. They saw him run to the counter and find a middle-aged fat man. The two of them whispered to each other. The fat man seemed to be a little unwilling at first, and scolded the waiter with a displeased expression. However, the waiter didn't seem to give up, and still persistently tried to persuade him. He even pointed at Cheng Menjing's table, and let the shopkeeper take a look. The shopkeeper glared at the waiter impatiently. Then, he glanced at Cheng Menjing's table. However, when he saw Cheng Menjing's lovely appearance, his eyes suddenly flashed with a stunned light. He was stunned. Cheng Menjing immediately put on a pitiful expression. She cupped her hands at the shopkeeper. Then, she quietly pointed to her own table, asking the shopkeeper to give her some face and give her some discount. The shopkeeper was stunned for a long time. The waiter kept nagging at the side. Finally, he gritted his teeth and nodded. He said a few words to the waiter and then waved his hand to signal for him to settle it. However, the shopkeeper's own eyes didn't move away from Cheng Menjing's face. He kept admiring the beautiful and charming young miss. He looked for a long time until the back of the waiter blocked his view. Then, the shopkeeper reluctantly looked away and went to greet other customers. The waiter didn't notice the gaze of the shopkeeper behind him. Instead, he happily walked to Cheng Menjing's table and said with a smile, "Thanks to this lady's beauty, our shopkeeper is also a man who has tender and protective feelings for the fairer sex. After my hard persuasion, he finally agreed to give you a discount of 1 spiritual crystal for the dishes. However, because the price of water is the same in the town, we can't give a discount. We will charge you 4 spiritual crystals." "Hee, thank you for saving us money, little brother." Cheng Menjing nodded happily. She was obviously very satisfied with the waiter's praise. She also complimented the waiter. Xiaofan Giant Bull was still holding the small bag tightly with a painful expression. It was as if he didn't hear the conversation between the two. "Why are you in a daze?" Cheng Menjing waited for a while and found that the Xiaofan Giant Bull didn't move at all. She couldn't help but urge, "Quickly pay the bill. We still have to go to the Dada Cultivation Chamber of Commerce and find a way to find someone." "Oh, okay." The Xiaofan Giant Bull came back to its senses. It gritted its teeth and counted from the small bag for a long time. Then, it took out 4 spiritual crystals and handed them to the waiter with trembling hands. Its burning eyes were still fixed on the spiritual crystals. Chapter 1400. Although its heart felt like it was being cut by a knife, West Mountain Giant Bull did not dare to eat without paying. The world of cultivators was full of hidden dragons and crouching tigers, and its strength was not high. It would not be good if it accidentally offended some big shot. Okay, I'll charge you 4 crystals. Thank you for your patronage. After the waiter accepted the spirit crystals, he put them into the small pouch on his waist and pointed outside with a smile. The Dada Immortal Cultivator's Chamber of Commerce is not far ahead. There is a large signboard hanging outside the door, so it's very easy to see. I hope you can find your lost companions as soon as possible. After pointing the way, the waiter cleaned up the empty dishes on the table, turned around, and walked to the counter. West Mountain Giant Bull was still a little angry. When it saw the 2 cups of tea that the waiter had placed on the table when it was paying the bill, it took them with hatred and drank the 2 cups. The water here was so expensive, these 2 cups of tea should cost half a spirit crystal, right? It would be a waste not to drink them. Seeing the behavior of the giant bull, Cheng Menjing couldn't help but roll her eyes and complained in a low voice, "Aren't you too much of a loser? How much can these 2 cups of tea be? How can you be so calculative?" The giant bull sighed helplessly. "My lady, the crystals are not yours. Of course, you don't understand me." Before it finished its words, there was a sudden rush of horse hooves outside the door. It came from afar like a storm, and it was mixed with men's curses. Xiaofan Giant Bull and Cheng Menjing looked at each other in astonishment, then raised their heads to look outside. They saw a few masked men dressed in black galloping from not far away. In a flash, they flew past the outside of the restaurant, so fast that only a few shadows could be seen. Cheng Menjing was shocked. She looked over curiously and found that the men in black were galloping forward while looking back from time to time. Although their faces were covered, everyone's eyes were very fierce, as if they were vultures staring at their prey. However, at this time, there was a trace of seriousness in their eyes. Especially the leader, Cheng Menjing's sharp eyes saw that his body was still losing blood, and his face was a little gloomy. It seemed that he was seriously injured. Following their gazes, Cheng Menjing did not see anything at first, but after a while, another group of people swarmed over. There were many of them, and they looked mighty. Their bodies were all emitting waves of yuan qi. Cheng Menjing observed carefully and found that although these people looked ordinary, all of them were at the qi refining stage. The middle-aged man who was leading them was at the 7th level of the qi refining stage. Motherf *****. You actually dare to run? Your father must slaughter you today. Just as Cheng Menjing was observing with interest, the middle-aged man shouted at the group of people in front of him. Then, he used his movement technique and quickly chased after them. Cheng Menjing was about to go out and see what was happening when she was suddenly pulled from behind. It turned out that the waiter had also heard the noise outside. He turned his head to look outside, and his expression changed. He saw that the beauty was about to go out, so he quickly ran over and pulled Cheng Menjing back. "What's wrong? What's going on outside? Why are you pulling me back?" Cheng Menjing looked at the waiter with some surprise and asked. Xiaofan walked behind Cheng Menjing at this time, and looked out in confusion. The waiter said nervously, "Miss, you'd better not go out for now. The Fan family's servants are chasing the horse gang outside. Swords have no eyes. If you are accidentally injured by them, it will be troublesome." Xiaofan heard the waiter say this, and was shocked to the point of sucking in a breath of cold air. He quickly pulled Cheng Menjing back and cautiously said, "Don't forget what you promised me before. It's dangerous outside, don't go out." When Cheng Menjing heard the two of them say this, she could only helplessly stop her steps. Although she already had the strength of a peak nascent soul cultivator, and didn't care about the qi refining cultivators outside, she didn't want to be inexplicably involved in other people's disputes. It was better to wait for the chase outside to end before going out. Although her footsteps had stopped, Cheng Menjing was still very curious about what was happening outside, and continued to look outside. Whoosh! Suddenly, there was a sound of wind breaking. Cheng Menjing saw clearly that the middle-aged man at the 7th level of the qi refining stage moved his fingers lightly, and a silver-white light shot out from between his fingers, directly piercing the leg of a horse gang in front of him. The horse let out a miserable neigh, and one of its legs slipped, causing it to lose its balance. The horse gang didn't have time to react, and he fell to the ground with his horse. His whole body was crushed by the horse, and he was dizzy from the fall, unable to get up for a long time. Hee, aren't you very capable? Are you very good at running? Let's see how you can run now. The middle-aged man sneered, and a trace of ruthlessness flashed in his eyes. He turned over and jumped off the horse, strode to the side of the man, and ridiculed him in a strange tone. After ridiculing him, the middle-aged man bent down, and reached out to pull out the silver-white weapon from the horse's leg. Cheng Menjing looked at the weapon, and it was a strangely shaped dagger. Then, he grabbed the man in black who was crushed by the horse, and used the dagger to firmly press against the man's neck. Brother! Brother Chen! Quickly save me! I don't want to die. Help! Feeling the chill on his neck, the black-clothed horse gang's whole body went limp, and his trembling voice shouted to the person in front of him who was not far away. Hearing the tone of the horse gang, Cheng Menjing seemed to be quite young, and should have just joined the horse gang not too long ago. She couldn't help but secretly shake her head. Of all the things he could do, he had to become a bandit. Now, he only knew fear after being caught. But to her surprise, the horse gang in front of her didn't abandon the captured horse gang, and instead chose to run away. Instead, they immediately pulled on the reins, and turned their horses around to look back. At the same time, the Fan family's servants who had been chasing finally rushed to the side of the horse gang. Seeing that these people had actually stopped running, they were immediately overjoyed, and quickly surrounded them. Oh, what's the matter? Is it because of brotherly affection that made people's blood boil? The middle-aged man looked at the group of horse gang with a face full of ridicule, and sneered with disdain. The leader of the black-clothed man gritted his teeth, and endured the bursts of pain from his wound. He stared at the middle-aged man, and coldly snorted, "If you want to kill us, then kill us. We will not yield. We are only staying here so that our brothers won't be lonely when they die." Chapter 1401. Ha ha ha. You're just a bunch of lowly scoundrels who specialize in stealing chickens and dogs. Do you really think of yourselves as heroes? The middle-aged man laughed impudently. He used his empty hand to pat the face of the mounted bandit in his hand and said with a smile, "Look, your brothers want to see you die. Don't you feel disheartened?" The mounted bandit's head was already covered in cold sweat. His tears and snot were mixed together, and his mouth was muttering something indiscernible. "Are you a man or not? Hurry up and do it. Don't be wishy-washy and say such nonsense." The black-clothed man frowned and said with dissatisfaction, "You can't wait to see your brothers die? All right, then I'll fulfill your wish." The middle-aged man looked at him mockingly. He then took off the mask of the mounted bandit in his hand and raised his eyebrows, saying, "Oh, I didn't expect you to be such a handsome young man. But it's a pity that your life ends here." A silver light suddenly flashed. The middle-aged man's sharp dagger quickly slashed across the neck of the young mounted bandit. He didn't leave any last words and was easily beheaded. With a shwa sound, fresh blood gushed out from the neck of the mounted bandit like a fountain. Then, the corpse fell limply to the ground, staining the entire ground red. Putting away the silver dagger, the middle-aged man swaggered the severed head of the mounted bandit in his hand. He then took out a bag and threw it into the bag. "Brothers, our patriarch Fan has said that as long as we can capture these mounted bandits, whether they're dead or alive, each one will be worth 50 spirit crystals." The middle-aged man shouted proudly, "If any of you want to get rich, then hurry up and do it. After we get our reward, we'll be able to enjoy ourselves for a while. If we're too late, we might all be robbed." Good. Kill these scum. A few of the Fan family's consecrators were excited. They raised their arms and shouted. They all activated their mental cultivation methods and took out all kinds of magical instruments. They rushed toward the group of black-clothed men aggressively. The leader of the black-clothed men saw that the situation was not good and shouted, "Brothers, since they won't let us live, then let's not be merciful. Killing one is not a loss. Killing two is a gain. Let's kill them." At this moment, the other bandits around him also looked as if they were not afraid of death. With the mentality that they would perish together with the enemy, they instantly became entangled in battle with the Fan family's offerings. On one hand, their eyes were red with greed for wealth, and on the other hand, they were fighting with all their might to save their lives. The originally quiet street was suddenly filled with the sounds of killing, and broken limbs were flying everywhere. Many of the nearby merchants immediately closed their doors to avoid being caught in the crossfire. Looking at the blood-splattered battlefield, Cheng Menjing's stomach churned as she recalled the scene of the young mounted gangster being beheaded. She turned around and took a few deep breaths. She thought to herself, "These people are too disgusting. In order to kill mounted gangsters to earn some spiritual crystals, they have to cut off their heads. I don't know what's wrong with them. Killing mounted bandits to earn spiritual crystals." Thinking of this, Cheng Menjing's eyes suddenly lit up. She excitedly patted the Xiaofan giant bull and said excitedly, "Hey, killing mounted bandits can earn so much money. Why don't we go kill them as well? Those mounted bandits seem quite weak. I think you can easily take care of them." "You're crazy. What are you thinking? That's too dangerous. Don't you see that they are all cultivators? And many of them are around the 4th or 5th level of the Qi refinement stage. How can they be so easy to kill?" The Xiaofan giant bull flatly rejected Cheng Menjing's suggestion. Seeing her unconvinced expression, it pointed to a place not far away and said, "If you don't believe me, look over there." Cheng Menjing glanced in the direction that the Xiaofan giant bull was pointing. Coincidentally, one of the Fan family's consecrators made a mistake and was directly hit in the head by another mounted bandit with a magical weapon. His whole body was sent flying, and red and white matter splattered in the air. When he landed, he was already dead. "TSK, I didn't expect you to be so timid. You're not willing to do anything. If you're like this, how can we earn spiritual crystals?" Cheng Menjing rolled her eyes and scolded him. If it weren't for the fact that she was afraid of being stained with blood, which would make it difficult to wash her dirty clothes, and also because she didn't want to reveal her true strength in front of the Xiaofan giant bull, Cheng Menjing would have already rushed out and killed all the mounted bandits and harvested their heads for spiritual crystals. "I say, madam, this matter is not as simple as you think it is." The Xiaofan giant bull sighed and explained patiently, "Even if I have the ability to do it, the Fan family's consecrators will never agree. When that time comes, not only will I not earn any spiritual crystals, but I will also be hunted down by them. I will not do such a thankless thing." In fact, the Xiaofan giant bull was not a fool. It was obvious that the Fan family had come to kill the mounted bandits for spiritual crystals. How could they let the money that was already in their hands fall into someone else's pocket? If such a person really appeared, he was definitely here to steal. From the Xiaofan giant bull's point of view, human nature was inherently greedy. Rather than being hunted down for a few dozen spiritual crystals, it was better to protect itself. Cheng Menjing pouted and finally stopped talking. Although she really wanted to earn some spiritual crystals to live, she also understood what it meant to be a sinister person. If the Fan family bore a grudge against her, she would not be able to bear the consequences. Looking at the killing outside, the Xiaofan giant bull shook its head and urged in a low voice, "Let's hurry up and leave. We can leave from the back door. After we go to the Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce and settle the matter of finding someone, we should find a place to work. It will be less dangerous." Cheng Menjing had no choice but to ask the waiter for directions to the back door. Then, she nodded at him to say goodbye and quietly left the restaurant with the Xiaofan giant bull through the back door. After slipping out of the restaurant, the Xiaofan giant bull recalled the 4 spiritual crystals that he had just taken out. It felt as if its heart was dripping blood. It was so king unlucky to be transported to such a broken place. Not to mention killing and looting on the streets, even a bottle of water was so expensive. It seemed like it had to find a way to get some spiritual crystals as soon as possible. Otherwise, it would not even be able to afford water, let alone food. Sooner or later, it would die of thirst here. I wonder if that restaurant is still hiring new employees? Should I go back and ask? Cheng Menjing did not think too much about it. After coming out from the back door, she walked around for a long time. When the movement in front of her disappeared, she directly walked forward. The Xiaofan giant bull could only carefully follow behind her. Chapter 1402. When they arrived at the street in front of the restaurant, Cheng Menjing looked over and found that a group of people had already finished fighting. The Fan family's consecrator had probably cleaned up all the mounted gangsters. There were no more scenes of fighting on the street except for some people cleaning up the mess. The West Mountain giant bull let out a sigh of relief. Cheng Menjing raised her head and observed the signboards of the roadside shops. She found that the Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce was just about 100 meters in front of them, so she quickly walked over there. Miss Cheng only wanted to find Xiao Chen and the others as soon as possible. As for other things, she could only adapt to the situation. When they arrived at the entrance of the Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce, the two of them found that it was completely unaffected by the commotion just now. It was still crowded and seemed to be very lively. Although the two of them were a little surprised, they still directly walked in. After taking 2 steps, the West Mountain giant bull suddenly saw a recruitment notice hanging on the wall. It immediately read it and said with a surprised expression, I didn't expect that this Chamber of Commerce, in addition to helping to find people, is actually recruiting cultivators to work. How about we earn some spirit crystals here first? That way, we won't even be able to pay for water. The West Mountain giant cow was quite interested in working to earn spirit crystals. If it could find a less dangerous job here, it wouldn't be as risky as killing the mounted gangsters. It would also be good if it could earn enough money to feed itself. Otherwise, it wouldn't know when it would run out of spirit crystals. Cheng Menjing also went over to take a look. Then, she looked around at the simple and crude office environment and frowned. She always felt that this Immortal Cultivation Chamber of Commerce was a bit like a shell company in the secular world. It was very unreliable. I don't think this place is reliable. Seeing that the West Mountain giant bull was still eagerly waiting for her reply, Cheng Menjing shook her head in disapproval and said with a face full of suspicion, Do you think they are swindlers? They want us to pay some clothing fees or management fees, and then run away with the spirit crystals. Or they want us to work for free for a period of time and then not pay us wages. There's such a thing? Isn't this an empty deal? Xiaofan giant ox doesn't know much about the secular world. It is stunned by the deception mentioned by Cheng Menjing. Isn't that so? Look at this rundown place. How does it look like a high-end company? I think this Chamber of Commerce is a little dangerous. Cheng Menjing curled her lips and snorted. What you said sounds reasonable. Xiaofan nodded in agreement. He rubbed his chin and thought for a while before saying, Then wait here for a while, I'll go ask someone. As soon as he finished speaking, Xiaofan Junyo turned around and strolled around the hall. He found a man who was standing on the side looking at the notice and pretended to casually ask, Brother, may I ask what this Immortal Cultivators Chamber of Commerce does? The name sounds a little strange. Could it be a scammer? When Cheng Menjing heard Xiaofan Junyo's question, she almost laughed out loud. This guy is too honest. He actually asked so bluntly. What if he is a staff member of the Chamber of Commerce? Aren't you scolding a bald donkey in front of a monk? Fortunately, the man seems to be a passerby. When he heard Xishan Junyo's question, although he looked at her strangely, he still shook his head and replied, "How is that possible? The Immortal Cultivators Chamber of Commerce is a super chamber of commerce in all the major counties of the cultivation world. Not only do they have many members, but they also have a good reputation. I heard that they have dealings with all the major sects and families. How could they be scammers? That's strange." Xishan Junyo scratched his head and muttered in confusion, "When I came here a few years ago, I don't think I've seen this Chamber of Commerce. The scale is so big. Where did they come from? It seems that you came from a relatively remote town." The man had an expression of sudden realization. He looked at Xishan Junyo and explained, "In the past, the Immortal Cultivators Chamber of Commerce only had branches in the counties. Recently, they began to expand their business to some remote towns. I heard that they are determined to cover all the large and small counties. This is enough to see how powerful they are." Looking at Xishan Junyo's contemplative expression, some of the doubts that the man originally had disappeared. He secretly thought that this guy must have come from a remote and desolate place. Otherwise, he wouldn't have never heard of the Immortal Cultivators Chamber of Commerce. He even suspected that they were scammers. After waiting for a while, seeing that Xishan Junyo had no intention of continuing to ask questions, the man was too lazy to say more. He turned around and busied himself with his own business. "Xishan Junyo, since this place isn't a scammer, why don't we give it a try first?" Cheng Menjing suggested. "Anyway, there is no other feasible way at the moment. We can work in the Immortal Cultivators Chamber of Commerce while asking people from the Chamber of Commerce to help us find Xiao Chen. It can be considered killing two birds with one stone." In fact, as the eldest daughter of the Cheng family, Cheng Menjing was not very willing to work for others. However, the current situation was unfavorable, so she could only endure it for the time being. Otherwise, when all the spirit crystals on Xishan Junyo were used up, their situation would probably be worse than now. "Okay, then I'll go ask the staff over there first." Xishan Junyo nodded and walked to the counter. He randomly found a man in a uniform, cupped his hands, and said, "Hello, I want to ask you to help me find a few companions. May I ask what the standard fee of your Chamber of Commerce is? Where did your companions go missing? How long have they been missing?" The staff didn't directly answer Xishan Junyo's question, but asked a question instead. They've been missing for a few days. I don't know the specific location, but it should be in the desert." Xishan Junyo thought about it and replied cautiously. "Oh, if they go missing in the desert, then it's more difficult to find them. Moreover, if they've been missing for too long, our Chamber of Commerce may not be able to find them." The staff wasn't as nervous as Xishan Junyo. He answered smoothly, "If you want to find a missing person, you need to ask the initiator to provide the physical appearance and characteristics of the missing person. The standard fee will also be divided into different levels." There are different levels? How is the specific fee calculated? Xishan Junyo was a little confused by the staff's set of words, so it asked subconsciously. The staff lowered his head and flipped through the manual, then reported in a clear tone, "It depends on how many employees you assign to help you find them. The usual standard is 10 spirit crystals per person per day. Of course, if you want to ask senior cultivators to help you find people, the fee will also increase exponentially because the efficiency will be higher." Chapter 1403. So expensive. I can't afford it. Hearing this amount, the bull was shocked. He couldn't even afford to eat and drink, let alone hire people to work for the Chamber of Commerce. How could he have extra money to spend on other things? Then there's nothing we can do. This is the standard fee of our Chamber of Commerce. It's the same in all counties, the staff member said expressionlessly as he spread out his hands. Xishan Giant Bull felt helpless, so it had to change the topic and asked, then if I want to apply for a job, how much is the pay for the job? The staff first lowered his head and took a sip of tea carefully. Then, he raised his head and said, there are many types of jobs. Low-level workers can earn 7 or 8 crystals a day. Middle-level workers can earn dozens of crystals a day. As for high-level workers, it depends on how much they are willing to pay. Some of the more dangerous jobs can even earn hundreds of crystals at once. Then what are the contents of these jobs? How easy are the simple tasks? How dangerous are the dangerous tasks? Cheng Menjing came over and asked. When she heard the staff member's offer, she had an idea. If the conditions were right, it would be better to choose a job that could earn more money. Now, she didn't even have the money to hire people. God knows what she would need to spend in the future. Alas, if I had known this would happen, I would have asked Jia Muzin for some spirit crystals before coming here. Then, I wouldn't be so poor now. You two are together? The staff looked at Cheng Menjing, who suddenly appeared, and then looked at the Xishan Giant Yak in confusion. Seeing the Xishan Giant Yak nod slightly, the staff then asked, then may I ask what is your cultivation level? The jobs in the Chamber of Commerce are divided according to strength. Those with higher strength can handle more dangerous tasks, so they can naturally earn more spirit crystals. My external strength is the 3rd level of the Evil Master stage, and my internal strength is the 1st level of the Foundation Establishment stage. The bull raised his chin with a proud expression. It was obvious that he was very confident in his cultivation. My external strength is the peak of the Venerable Realm, and my internal strength is the 1st level of the Qi refinement stage. Cheng Menjing hesitated for a moment and said cautiously. After coming to the world of cultivation, Cheng Menjing learned from Xishan Giant Bull that the division of strength in the world of cultivation was very different from that in the internal martial arts world. If it was an ordinary martial cultivator or devil cultivator, they would basically have to start from the Qi refinement stage after coming to the immortal cultivation world, which was equivalent to starting from zero. Therefore, no matter how powerful a martial venerable or demon venerable was in the inner martial world, their cultivation level would usually be ignored after they entered the world of cultivators. This was because most people here only looked at one's inner strength, which was the strength of a cultivator. As for the 3rd level of the evil sect mentioned by the giant bull, it was because the first time he entered the cultivation world, he had already broken through the ceiling of the venerable realm and reached a higher level. In the world of cultivation, the level above the venerable realm was unified as the martial arts sect, the devil sect, and the evil sect. The evil cultivators were hated by the martial arts world, but they had their own place in the world of cultivation. This was because these were external strength. No matter how powerful they could not compete with the internal strength. Therefore, in the eyes of cultivators, martial cultivators, devil cultivators, and evil cultivators were all relatively low-level cultivators. They were not taken seriously by them. They paid more attention to the cultivation of their own inner strength. As for Cheng Menjing, her strength was actually similar to Xiao Chen's. Before she entered the world of cultivation, she had already reached the peak of the original infant stage. Previously, she did not understand what Xiao Chen meant when he said that cultivators were more powerful than martial cultivators and devil cultivators. After listening to Xishan Giant Bull's explanation, she realized that she was the highest level cultivator in the legends. Although she was secretly happy, Cheng Menjing still deliberately concealed her own inner strength. After all, she did not know much about Xishan Giant Bull. She did not intend to expose her true cultivation too early, lest she accidentally made a fool of herself. In addition, Cheng Menjing also felt that if she wanted to work with Xishan Giant Bull, the difference in their strength should not be too big. Otherwise, if they were assigned to work in different places, it would be even more difficult for the two of them to contact each other. Although Qing Menjing did not like Xishan Giant Bull very much, under the current situation, the two of them could only work together. After they found Xiao Chen, they could think about the next thing. Well, your strength is not bad. You can barely do some intermediate tasks. The staff looked at Xishan Giant Bull and nodded. Then, he turned his head to look at Qing Menjing and frowned. As for your level, it is a bit too low. You are only at the first level of Qi training. There is not much difference between you and an ordinary person. You can only do some simple mining work. You are a girl. I am afraid it is not very suitable. That. Little brother, Xishan Giant Bull saw that the situation was not good and quickly smiled. She is my. Ahem. Without waiting for Xishan Giant Bull to finish speaking, Qing Menjing immediately cleared her throat and glared at him with a slightly threatening look. My granddaughter. The Xishan Giant Bull immediately recalled what Qing Menjing had said to him in the restaurant just now, and hurriedly changed his words and raised his status by another level. Only then did Qing Menjing let out a satisfied The staff member was confused by the two people who were talking in riddles. He asked in surprise, So? She is relatively young. I have to take care of her safety. Xishan Giant Bull wiped his sweat and explained with a forced smile, if you can arrange for us to work together, that would be the best. Even if we get a lower salary, it is not a problem. Although his words were very humble, Xishan Giant Bull felt very unhappy in his heart. He was too unlucky. He actually met a little girl with such a low cultivation, and he had to give in to her for everything. He was really unlucky for 8 lifetimes. I see. The staff thought for a while and found a contract from the cabinet. He put it on the table and said while holding his chin, in that case, why don't you both get a salary? I happen to have a suitable job here. The specific content is written on the contract. You can take a look. If there is no problem, you can sign and mark it. Xishan Jinyunyu and Qing Menjing looked at each other. They thought that since the two of them were working together, it wouldn't make much of a difference if they got a share of the salary. They nodded and took the contract in front of them. The two of them read it carefully from beginning to end and found that the job marked in the contract was to work in a place called Ji Shop. The requirements for strength were relatively broad, ranging from the first level of the Qi refinement stage to the first level of the foundation establishment stage. However, the specific amount of salary was not specified. It was stated that the salary would be given according to the individual's strength. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.